Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. We've got an excellent session lined up with some really superb speakers and panelists. Before I hand over to the very first presenter, Ben Wilkins of GoodBoost, I'd just like to share a few slides with you to put the session into context. So I'm going to load up my presentation and begin sharing with you. So my name is David Wortley. For those who don't know me, I'm Vice President of the International Society for Digital Medicine. And amongst my things I've done in my life and my background, I've been involved in gamifying my own health, simply as a way of giving myself less chance of getting ill. This was long before the coronavirus situation. In my case, it was a way of trying to prevent myself from getting diabetes 2, because I discovered from my DNA profile that I was at risk of getting diabetes 2. So I gamified my own health. I'll talk about that later. But I just want to put the today's presentation into context, and the reason why the use of technology for preventative healthcare is so important. Looking at the causes of mortality in 2020, we can see that the coronavirus situation actually is not a primary cause of death. There are a lot of other conditions which are primary causes of death, and these include at the top of the list coronary artery disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or COPD, and lower respiratory tract infections. Again, this is another way of graphically representing it. You can see how between the year 2000 and 2016, the top 10 global causes of death have had a shift away from communicable diseases, which in the earlier part of the 20th century was the primary cause of death, to the situation in 2016 where you're most likely to die of non-communicable diseases. And these non-communicable diseases are lifestyle related. That's the key point to mention. And so we're in a situation today where people over the age of 80 and those with chronic conditions are the most vulnerable to coronavirus. So if nothing else, we need to find solutions for preventative healthcare, which reduces the risk of a premature death. And if I can recall correctly, if you are over the age of 80, you are over 600 more times more likely to die of coronavirus than somebody between the age of 18 and 20. So we live in a situation where we've got these global lifestyle related challenges. And Simon Stevens in the Daily Mail many years ago described obesity as being like a slow motion car crash that could cripple the NHS. So it's certainly true that lifestyle related conditions are probably the primary cause that will lead to the unsustainability and over demand on the healthcare services. And these are some of the global challenges that are resulting in the conditions like obesity, etc., sedentary lifestyle, convenience food, comfort eating, inadequate exercise, etc. So one of the consequences of this having access to a convenient and lifestyle is an access to our daily wants and needs in the developed world. It is a decline in the physical and mental challenges necessary for our lifelong development and health maintenance. And this is a picture actually of my mother when she was in a hospital. My mother died at the age of 86 of dementia. And so there are many different challenges that we face, and anything that we can do to address these kind of challenges is going to be welcome. And that is the essence of the presentation and the webinar today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to hand over to Ben Wilkins of GoodBoost, who's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and then he's going to give you a presentation about the wonderful work that he's been doing in preventative healthcare. Ben.
Thank you very much, David. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and we can get going. Can I just check with you, David? You can see them?
Yes, I can. Yeah,
fantastic.
We see the...
Brilliant. So I'm Ben Wilkins. My background is as an osteopath and a musculoskeletal researcher. My current fellowship is researching the role of gamification for older adult exercise for motivation and long-term engagement around conditions such as arthritis and back pain. I'm an MSK clinical champion for Versa Arthritis, and I'm also CEO of a social enterprise called GoodBoost. So exercise has been a big...
Ben, sorry to interrupt you, Ben. Could you make your slides full screen to advance them? We're just seeing your script.
Right. Sorry, let me go. Sorry, I can see what I've done. Let me go for the other screen. There you go. That should do it then.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So exercise has been a big focus of my past work and research, and to put it bluntly, is pretty damn good for you. So regular physical activity reduces back pain by 25%. People who move more reduce the risk of depression by 30%. Exercise cuts the risk of heart attacks by 47%. Weekly swimming increases your IQ. 37 squats a day keeps the tooth fairy at bay, and daily jogging significantly increases your chance of levitation and or reaching nirvana. Now, some of these stats are more rigorous and factual than others, but the problem is that the information about benefits and risks of being more or less active generally isn't enough to get people to change their behavior and be more active. And whether it's strength and balance exercises or better blood sugar monitoring, adapting diet to, or using your phone camera to check your eye health, if we're going to create patient or user-facing technology to generate self-monitoring and self-management and health, they all depend on a key element: motivation. ORCHA, the medical app reviewer, highlighted there are 325,000 health apps out there, almost 1/3 of a million, with around 4 million of these apps being downloaded every single day. And as time's gone on, reports are coming in that they may not be creating the health improvement we all hoped. They haven't been the panacea we expected. And this is a huge problem, because as David rightly said, the health challenges of the 21st century are not the same as the 20th. Our challenges center around non-communicable diseases, long-term health conditions, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, musculoskeletal disorders, chronic pain, obesity. The prevalence and cost of these conditions continue to rise dramatically, yet all of them have highly modifiable risk factors through lifestyle adaptation, highly effective self-management treatments such as diet and exercise. So when the solution sounds so simple and achievable, move more, eat less, why haven't the supercomputers that live in our pockets, which we use for hours every single day, that have fundamentally changed our lives and how we live them, not transformed our health? You see, here's the problem. I'm about to be good, to do my exercises because I know it's good for me and my body. I installed a new app a couple of days ago and I've heard it's really good. I pick up my phone, I go to unlock it, and then I see this. Wait a minute, that was about half an hour ago. I better just drop them a line because I don't want to be rude. And suddenly you're 20 minutes into watching cat videos before you know where the time has gone. And then, well, that time you put aside is now dinner time. It's a bit too close to dinner to do anything else before we get there. And we've all done it. We've all gone to check the time on our phone only to realize we didn't actually see what the time was because we ended up looking at something else. We're addicted. I'm addicted. This isn't a new concept. But this is the challenge. We could design the best, most evidence-based, most effective health app in the world. And if you followed it, the perfect set of exercises, made the right modifications to your diet, it reduced your risk of cancer by 50%, your risk of heart disease by 40%, your risk of diabetes by 40%. And all you need to put in is 30 minutes of effort, only 5 days a week, meaning you get the weekends off. Great. Well, it already exists. And research shows that adapting our diets and exercises creates this level of health improvement. If it was a pill, it would be a wonder drug. So why don't we do it? Well, there's this, but it's deeper than that. And there's this too. We're already spending hours on our phones every day. Surely some of that time could go towards being healthy, right? But it's deeper than that. One of the challenges we face is present bias. The outcomes in front of us are much more motivating than the even more important outcomes in the future. And that's why the app notification that appears in front of us are so motivating. We're really bad at future forecasting. The heart attack you avoid is 20 years away. But avoiding that sweaty aerobic session, that tasty piece of chocolate cake, that binge watching a series on Netflix and messaging your friend about it, that happens right now. All the quick access dopamine hits you can handle. Hard work pays off in the future, but laziness pays off right now. We all know the established facts. It's important and valuable to look after your health. For yourself, your family, your friends, and society. We just don't engage with these established facts in the way that is easy to elicit the best actions for our future selves. It's not a knowledge deficit, it's a behavior deficit. Our heads look one way, but our hearts drag us in the opposite direction. Everything we tell people about healthy behaviors is based on the idea that we all behave rationally. If we tell people smoking and drinking is bad for our health, people wouldn't do it. I receive facts and information, I process that information, and I'll change my behavior as a result. Is not that straight a line. It's not that we don't know better, it's that we don't do better. We are irrational beings. Our decisions are based on emotional, social, environmental context. But we are irrational in highly predictable ways, and we can design strategies to overcome them. But these guys got the memo and built the strategies first. If we're going to win the self-management behavior battle to encourage people to take time out of their lives to create healthy habits, we're competing with these guys. We're all in the disposable time attention economy. What most health apps do is focus on creating a relationship between the user and the app. The app is good, is evidence-based, it's been approved. It tells you what to do and even gives you colorful bars and graphs to tell you how good or bad you're doing. Well, there's a trump card for this. When an app creates a relationship to other people through the app, your relationship isn't with the app. It's the world of connections inside it. This is what makes social media so addictive, because it draws on the strings that makes us innately human. That seeking human connection, that shared group understanding, that emotional support. And game apps, they rake in billions and billions of dollars every year because they created game mechanics to feed off the quick dopamine hits that keep us coming back for more, plus the social connections, the collaboration, competition in the game. So if we're going to compete, we need to think like this and we need to play on the same level. We need to give the same dopamine hits that Silicon Valley understands so well so we can grab people's attention, so that they can gain real health points, not just virtual game points. So my work at GoodBoost has been developing health technology to transform swimming pools into therapeutic spaces over the past few years. Individually tailored aquatic rehab for a wide range of musculoskeletal conditions, such as arthritis and back pain. Every participant's program is designed around them with our clinical AI, and we've seen incredible health improvement by working in public pools. But the big part of the reason why it works isn't just the tech. It's the immersive experiencing social connections, laughter, pool style game exercises, and participants forming organic peer support groups. People don't come back for their tech. They come back because they want to talk about the weather with Julie, or the recent episode of Strictly Come Dancing or Bake Off with Darren over a coffee before the session. The secret to repeat behaviors and engagement we see at GoodBoost is down to social connections, fun, and week-by-week achievable goals in their progress. It's the same principles as why social media and game apps are so addictive. So it's not just about creating more health apps with better AI, that's more effective recommendations, because telling patients the efficacy or the risk ratios just doesn't create engagement. It needs to be more than that. We need to create humor and emotion, whether that's face-to-face or virtual, because humor is what we use to break down barriers to create bonds and connections, plus laughter is the best medicine. We need to design solutions that focus on the short-term benefits of feeling better, those quick dopamine rewards, we've got to stop expecting that people are going to be motivated because of benefits 5 years from now. And we need to create peer support and collective accountability. There's a different psychology we're plugging into. We all let ourselves down in our healthy living activities and actions every day of the week. We don't go for that jog, we eat that Christmas cake. But when we're accountable to a group, we're less likely to miss the exercise session if it contributes to a group goal. Because when we achieve the elements of enjoyment, social, and goals, we engage people's full attention and hopefully immerse them into long-term healthy habits. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ben. If you'll stop sharing your screen now, we can have a look at you.
Hang on, I've lost, where's that gone?
I think that was an excellent introduction to this session. I think it articulated both the challenges and feasible solutions. So just for the benefit of the audience, if you have any questions, please type them into Q&A. I'm going to ask the other panelists if they've got anything they want to ask or share with Ben before he has to move on. No? Okay, well, I'll think of a question then. Then Ben, when you're getting these people together, is it only swimming pools that you work with, or are there other gym-based exercises that work on the same principle?
We started in pools because myself and GoodBoost clinical director, our specialism is in aquatic rehabilitation. So that's what we started to focus on. Also because for a lot, we started with people who were awaiting hip and knee replacement surgery. At that point, when they're at that level of severity of osteoarthritis, land exercise just becomes really difficult. So that's why we started working in water, because it's achievable, it's low impact, buoyancy is great. But we've moved on to land as well. So we kind of cover a whole leisure centre, and we also have a public app for land exercise at home too.
So is this a kind of franchise business model that you have at the moment?
So yeah, I guess we have become the Zumba of rehabilitation. We work with leisure centres, and we provide them with the training, the kit, the know-how, the software, so they can transform their leisure centre into a community musculoskeletal hub to support people with their back pain, arthritis, pre and post surgery, prehab and rehab.
And do you operate outside of the UK?
No, but we're due to launch in a couple of European countries next year. We're currently speaking to South Africa about doing some pilots there next year as well. So 2020 is because of this was meant to happen this year, but it's been a challenging year to work outside of the borders of your country. But next year we will be moving into the EU and South Africa.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we do have a question, and where it's more of a request of you from Georgie Peeve, and he wants your contact details so that you can reach him by email. So if you can respond to him, just type something in the chat so that he can pick it up, or just answer his question. He does provide his details, his email address, etc.
There you go. It should be in there now. Georgie, there's my email.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, I know you've got to go to another meeting, Ben, and I just want to thank you for getting us off to such a good start to the session. And if you get an opportunity to join us later on before the close time in a couple of hours' time, then you'll be more than welcome. But for now, thank you very much. And then we'll move on to our next speaker.
Thank you very much, David. Cheers.
Thank you. So now I'm moving on to our next speaker, Valentino Megale, you should be able to see him in a very nice and attractive coffee shop, where no doubt there will be some of the temptations that Ben spoke about, muffins and the like, which I'm always prone to. So Valentino, would you like just to introduce yourself and then lead into your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. So I'm Valentino Megale. My background is in neuropharmacology, and I'm after years working in the classical wet lab developing innovative drugs. I started 5 years ago to explore how digital technologies can improve the patient's experience during therapy and medical procedures beyond drugs. So we started our digital health startup, Softcare Studios, and today I will describe also what we are doing at Softcare Studios using virtual reality to improve patients' quality of life in the hospital. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, do you see my slides?
We do, yes.
Okay. All right, this is, okay, perfect. So before starting, very short intro about Softcare Studios. So we are a digital health startup. We are now working in 9 hospitals, mainly in Italy, but also in collaboration with some hospitals in the US, in Houston. We are undergoing 4 hospital pilots in order to show up the objective impact of our virtual reality solutions for patients. And we are often working in collaboration with medtech, pharma companies, and research facilities to facilitate the distribution and the go-to-market of our solutions, but also to push forward the research about how to collect biometrics, stress-related data with VR systems, because one of the challenges to introduce a virtual reality system in a hospitals is obviously the certification process, even of the device and of any additional device we add to the VR headset in order to measure the outcomes and the stress-related information of patients. So our silent goal is also to minimize as much as possible the virtual reality solutions that we provide to patients in the hospital. So let's start from virtual reality. We use virtual reality because it is a digital, not invasive solution to support patients. And at the same time, it is a deeply persuasive technology. It is useful for us to change and improve the attitudes of patients towards what they experience daily in the hospital setting. And this comes from how virtual reality is designed and how it works. It is a technology designed to simulate our presence in other places, in virtual places, different from the places where we are with our physical body. And this is made possible thanks to the immersion in the virtual scenario provided by the virtual reality headset, which is basically a tool to elude and trick our brain about the realism of the scenario he's perceiving in that moment. What is provided by virtual reality is the opportunity to enter and experience any kind of experience just on demand, just like we are doing today with TV shows on Netflix. And this is very important because just with the same virtual reality headset, wherever you are, in whatever condition you are basically allowed to choose your experience and just go through that experience based on your needs, on your ambitions, on your desires. And why experience matters? Because experience shapes our cognitive processes. In these slides, I'm showing a very basic psychomotor loop. This is the basis of our daily life. Everything starts from receiving sensorial cues from the external world or from our body, and our brain processes this stimuli in order to generate what we know as perception. We perceive the world through our senses. And next, everything we perceive is evaluated. It is compared with our past experiences. This comparison, this evaluation is very important because we can understand based on our experience if we are in front of an opportunity to catch up or a risk to avoid. And this is important because this is the basis of our survival in our daily life. And obviously, to catch an opportunity or avoid a risk, we react to sensorial stimuli. And a reaction can be a motor reaction, can be a sensorial reaction, a cognitive, a social, a cultural reaction. There is a variety of reactions out there. And this is important because virtual reality provides us with audio and visual stimuli. It integrates in the psychomotor loops, and it is able basically to expose the user to a specific scenario, expose the user to audiovisual triggers and audiovisual cues, trigger a specific reaction in the user, a motor reaction, a cognitive and emotional reaction, and through this triggering, we can guide the reactions of the users towards a meaningful goal for a specific setting. So we can expose, trigger, and guide the reaction of a user towards an entertainment goal, towards a better education, towards also to just an entertainment, a gaming, an engagement goal. Obviously, we can iterate this goal in every kind of setting, obviously also in the healthcare setting. So virtual reality can be conceived as a digital health tool because it offers us the possibility to provide sensorial stimuli, to guide the patients towards a meaningful goal in his healthcare setting. It can be rehabilitation, it can be pain management, etc. Regarding virtual reality applications in healthcare, they start in the early 90s with the pioneering researchers by Hunter Hoffman and Dr. Peterson, who used virtual reality and snow world, the virtual reality gaming experience in the snowy world, to reduce the pain perception in polyburned patients. And what they discovered is that, yes, virtual reality in this case is effectful because it is distracting patients from the perception of pain, but it's far beyond just distraction. Patients undergoing MRI tests showed that basically virtual reality is able to reduce the activity of brain areas normally useful for pain processing. And this is beyond perception. Virtual reality and the sensorial stimulation of an immersive scenario is able to compete with pain perception in order to become a priority for our perception process. So starting from the early 90s, virtual reality has been applied in very, very different settings, from pain perception to stress management to rehabilitation, also for the treatment of phobia and PTSD. So the variety of application is very, very wide. In our case at Softcare Studios, we decided to focus on the stress management and education of patients in the hospital setting. Because what we discovered and we explored with patients, their families, and with doctors is that stress levels obviously are not only in our mind. They are able to promote the development of a variety of pathological conditions beyond the starting pathological conditions of patients. They are able to reduce the quality of life of patients, and they are also able to reduce the adherence to therapy of patients. So patients undergoing therapy and medical treatments, they feel anxiety, they experience pain, they experience even social isolation. And this is something that triggers delays in the hospital routine. They trigger avoiding behaviors that reduce also the compliance of patients to the guidelines of the doctors. It does not depend obviously from the doctors themselves, but it's something that is impacting both the quality of life of patients and the work of doctors. So we also, discussing with patients and with their families, we discovered and explored that, yes, the stress levels depends and emerge from what space patients experience around them in the hospital setting and how they live their time in the hospital setting. So what space and the quality of time they experience during the medical treatment. So are we able to improve what space patients experience and how they experience their time as patients? We decided to use virtual reality to do that and to reach the goal of the stress management and education of patients to reduce their stress levels and increase their adherence to therapy. So we started from the stress management in pediatrics. We developed a first project, Tommy, which is basically a virtual reality gaming experience where patients are engaged and distracted by this fantasy world in virtual reality, but they're also challenged by specific game activities that has been designed in collaboration also with doctors and psychologists in order to trigger the sensory, motor, and cognitive skills of children. And additionally, we also introduced activities where children play with their parents. And this is something that emerged in time and which is very, very important for us and for the patients that we are serving. That is, distraction matters, it is important, but communication and relationship in the hospital settings matters as well. Because Tommy, beyond the distraction of virtual reality, become in time a platform to allow children communicate with their parents and also with the medical staff beyond the boundaries of the disease and of therapy. They use Tommy as a way to discuss about their life, about their interest, about their ambitions beyond the walls of the hospitals. And this is something that brought a lot of value. And this is something that could be deepened, could be explored, to be better introduced in new future projects. So we are now testing Tommy. Obviously, this year has been tough for hospital pilots because of the COVID pandemics. So we stopped a lot of our pilots beginning of this year, and we are now restarting them. But preliminary data that we are collecting in the hospital settings, especially when using Tommy during critical medical procedures like chemotherapy or blood test, is that virtual reality and that particular activities in Tommy are able to reduce the pain perception of patients by a 38%, which is a meaningful percentage. Obviously, we need more data and to increase also the data set that we have available right now. And this is able to increase the positive attitude of patients towards their environment. But it also showed us that population of patients is not the same. There is no one standard patient. Every patient is different. Every hospital is different. And that virtual reality is something that is strictly connected with the attitude of patients. So we can, there are two kinds of patients, the monitors and the blanters. That are patients, the monitors, who cope with risk and with challenges, controlling that risk. And for them, the pure distraction by virtual reality is not so efficient as for other kind of patients. On the other side, the blanters are patients who naturally avoid the risk. And for them, an escape in virtual reality is definitely very, very effective. So when using virtual reality, we need to take into consideration the differences inside the population, which cannot be just standardized. We are also replicating this model with adult and elder patients because we understood that we are now focusing also on the education of patients about therapy, the challenges of disease, what they can expect from a specific medical procedure. So distraction is important to help patients go beyond the walls. Also, better knowing the therapy and the clinical setting in something that is able to reduce anxiety and pain, especially in adult patients. So we are focusing on stress management through distraction and stress management through education of patients. For instance, we are providing simulation of the medical procedures that are showing patients how will be the real procedure in real world, so they can experience it all the times they desire in order to get familiar with that specific procedure. We are also experimenting with space as a healing dimension. So there are in the real world the so-called healing gardens, spaces dedicated for elders with neurodegenerations, and they are used to trigger the sensory and the motor skills and also the social skills of elder patients. But right now, during the COVID pandemic, all these patients cannot access to these spaces because of social distancing, but also because of lockdowns. So we are working with foundations and associations in Italy in order to replicate or design virtual replica in virtual reality of these healing spaces and provide virtual reality to all those patients that are locked at home and cannot just access these real world spaces. Probably it is not exactly as a healing and as a physical healing garden, but it is a compromise between having the access to a healing garden and not having at all an access to that garden. So virtual reality can be a meaningful tool to ensure the accessibility to care interventions, but also to set up a continuity of care interventions beyond every kind of pandemics or critical situation. So virtual reality enable both patients and clinicians to approach the health in a very holistic way. Just like described by the World Health Organization, health is not just physical well-being, it is also mental and social well-being. And virtual reality enables us to let all these aspects, physical, social, emotional, cognitive aspects, to emerge as a priority in the patient's experience during any kind of therapy. And just to conclude also my intervention, what we learned is that virtual reality is not a digital pill. It is not something that we just provide to a passive user and they just need to use it and that's it. It is a process that requires attention before and after the virtual reality session. This is something that requires to build a better attitude of patients toward the tool and toward the intervention. This is something that requires also a better education of the medical staff. If there is no education of the medical staff, if there is no promotion of a better attitude of patients, we are not able, and patients are not able, to take advantage of the potential of virtual reality. Beyond the distraction, virtual reality also offers us additional features, like this is very portable, so we can use the same device and moving that from one hospital department to another, allowing different kind of patients to access through the same device the content that best fits for their needs. It is flexible, it is software, so we can design very different experiences to exactly fit in the needs of every kind of patients. It provides us with data collection. So with that device, we can collect data in order to quantify, measure, and profile the stress conditions and the performances of patients and track them in time. This is very important to make all these aspects a priority in care interventions. It increases the multi-stakeholder collaboration. So we bring virtual reality and we trigger the collaboration, the communication, and the relationship between patients, caregivers, and the medical staff. And it also can be used to promote accessibility and continuity of care. So what we can learn from virtual reality is that space that we leave as patients is not something that we should passively suffer, but this is something that we can reshape, that we can change and adapt to really promote a better quality of life of patients in the hospitals and beyond. So thank you for your attention. These are my contacts, and I'm super ready for your questions if you have. Thank you. David, sorry, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Valentino, for that very insightful presentation. I think it followed on nicely from the previous session. Do you have any, is a technology they use, does it have the medical certification, or is that something that you see developing in the future?
We are expecting to certify this, our solution as, especially Tommy, as a medical device class 1. But obviously we are in the phase of data collection and piloting inside of the hospital. So we expect to, after this strange year, to process all this data, provide the evidences of our solutions, and then start the certification process.
So how do you see the technology developing? What role will something like AI play in the development of these applications? Could you manipulate the virtual environments based on the patient's reaction to environments?
The AI and machine learning features are now being introduced also in the design process. This is a very interesting horizon. On one side, with virtual reality, we can collect a lot of kind of data, and we could use those data to adapt the virtual scenario to the specific needs of every patient. Because as I said, there is no one standard patient. There are a lot of patients. So the best solution for the future is to design a standard common content that is able to adapt to any kind of patients based on the data collected by the VR system. That would be great. And obviously machine learning and AI could play a key role in this process. Another element is cloud. So the new kind of connectivity like 5G and the cloud processing of those data would enable virtual reality to go beyond the limits of current hardware and really improve the content base of every kind of user. We are still not using AI inside of our solutions, but we expect to use it when available, the cloud computing, the cloud processing of our data.
Okay, we just have time for one more question. This is from Carl Bridge. Would you agree that VR is part of an overall service for patients, carers, and health professionals?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. I really believe in virtual reality as a hub for very different needs and requirements, not only from patients, but also health professionals, also the caregivers. So how you integrate virtual reality in a hospital settings require a multi-stakeholder collaboration, but it also provides value for a multi-stakeholder ecosystem.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Valentino. We now time to move on to George Kowalski. George is in Dubai. We're all very jealous of this, George. George worked for Orca, which is in fact, it ties in very nicely with Ben's presentation. I hope that Ben didn't steal your thunder by
Not at all.
Revealing the number of mobile health apps that there are on the marketplace at the moment. So, George, over to you. Would you like just to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Orca and then do your presentation?
Of course, yeah. My name's George Kowalski. I'm the Business Development Director for Orca. David, you're quite right. Basically, Orca is the organization for the review of care and health applications. However, we do much more than that, which is what I'm going to cover in my presentation. You're correct when Ben was discussing the actual aspects of what's important concerning the number of apps on the market and also available to the end user. It's imperative that there is some kind of restriction now with regards to stopping the worst of those apps becoming available to the end user. And that could be anybody from a patient through to a member of the clinical community. So it's our goal to ensure that we adhere to all the standards and guidelines, work with NICE. We've been working with the NHS Digital Department for a long time now to ensure that only the best and the safest apps for VR, AI, and everything else is actually available on the market to the end user.
Okay, well, would you like to tell us more through a presentation?
Indeed, of course. So I'm going to now share my screen, and hopefully you should see on your screen the 5 steps to achieving digital health integration. Is that correct?
We can.
Wonderful, thank you. So as Ben was stating, with regards to the actual information that we have to adhere to and we cover, Orca's goal is ensuring that in effect we look at all the actual health and care applications on the market. a slight update from Ben's particular presentation. There's about 367,000 applications on the market at this moment in time. That's increased due to elements such as COVID-19, because more and more are now becoming readily available for the end user to have a look at. And if you look at the actual number of those applications available throughout the spectrum, you actually have approximately 5 to 6 million downloads every single day. And that's a phenomenal number. And if you, for example, walk around and you look at the users who are using the actual apps, they are standard everyday people who go along and throughout their working day, stop, look at their phones and download an application. You're quite right. I'm actually in Dubai at the moment talking to the Ministry of Health and Prevention. But basically, walking around here, taxi drivers, shopkeepers all have access to mobile devices. They all download the apps and they look to see what they're like. Sadly, there are a lot of apps on the market today which are actually quite poor quality, are badly developed, and in fact extraordinarily dangerous to the end user. They can tell people, for example, whether they have HIV. They can tell people, for example, the quickest and the best ways of killing themselves, even though they are a suicide prevention app. So it's our goal, it's our aim to ensure that those apps are stopped in their tracks, and we only offer the accredited and approved apps from ORCHA to the end users through a number of different ways. And I'm going to discuss those with you very quickly now. But before I do, to put things in context, when someone actually has a specific condition. So we were talking, David, you yourself spoke about diabetes at the beginning of the actual presentation. When someone actually confirms that they actually have a condition, they don't always know whether an app or whether some specific form of AI can actually assist them or help them with the actual management of that condition. So awareness is the main problem we actually have here. And from there, even if you are aware that actually there is an app out there that can help me get over my specific problems with, for example, hip replacement, knee replacement, diabetes, COPD, and COVID-related aspects such as mental health as well, then they don't always know where to find those apps. And again, as Ben mentioned, if you look at the actual Google and Apple app stores and you search for a specific standard such as anxiety, for example, you don't always get back apps. You sometimes get back games, you sometimes get back information, but you don't always get the apps that you require. And that's our goal to fix, because those apps are available. Those specific areas of interest, those specific elements where we can assist the end user are available, and we ensure that the trustworthiness and the governance behind that actually is within the actual app review in itself. So to get over the barriers of using digital health, because that's what we're looking at this moment in time, what we actually need to know first of all is the first step, which solutions actually are good, because there are so many available on the market. And we've all been there where we download a solution or download an app and we basically look at it, don't like it, delete it after 3 days or so. And we ensure that when apps are used, they are used continuously for a long period of time. So what we go along and do is we look at national accreditation, not only in the UK, but also all over the world as well. We're working with organizations, as I mentioned, in the UAE, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, the Nordics, Europe, and everywhere else as well. And we are working with those organizations to ensure that when we perform our reviews of the actual health and care apps available on the market today, we get rid of those which do not have the relevant GDPR in place, the relevant data protection in place, the relevant data security in place. If we're looking at level 3 and level 4 apps, which are clinical apps, we make sure that we actually look at all the elements specifically with regards to clinical awareness and clinical assurance. And that's really, really important, because if the app itself is to work, it has to work in the right way for that person. As I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be a patient. It could be a student. It could be a carer, it could be a member of the actual clinical community, and so on and so on. So our reviews themselves ensure that effectively we look at the review, we ensure that our 350 points are adhered to within the Orca baseline review engine. And we then also have our apps reviewed by end users. So graduates who go through and in fact look at the apps themselves and review them. And we also have as well our clinicians who review our apps, which are the clinical aspect apps that we actually have available on the market. Once we have performed the review itself, we can ensure that the review itself gives that particular application or that particular solution a score, and we can then present that score to the end user who needs that particular solution. And that's the second step of ensuring Orca digital integration, telling people which are the best solutions to use and where to find them. And what we do is we ensure that we create through CCGs, through county councils, through universities and schools, through, for example, NHS trusts, through ministries of health and so on, the best libraries, or if you like, digital formularies of the best apps available on the market. So here, for example, you can see two examples on the actual screen. One, which is the app for Dorset, which gives all the actual members of the community in Dorset the ability of searching for apps and searching for the best and safest apps under each individual condition. In addition, to the right of there, you'll see also one of the actual libraries for a member-only library, which is the British Dietetics Association. And they have their own library specifically to show them the best diabetes apps, the best healthy living apps, the best nutrition apps, and so on and so on. So once you have got the ability of ensuring the apps you are looking at are the most trustworthy and governance ridden, and once you then have the ability of presenting those apps to the end users through some form of formulary or library, the third thing we ensure is that we look at, for example, on here, the focus groups to make sure that when you present those applications, they are specifically the best ones to deal with that condition and to manage that condition. So we have our own Orca transformation model or delivery model where we look at, for example, the target audience, whether that's going to be patients with dementia, Alzheimer's, whether it's going to be mental health users in children and adolescents, or whether, for example, it's simply going to be those who are looking at healthy and well-being. When we look at the actual target audience, we look at the conditions, the cohorts, and the pathways they adhere to. We then look at all the digital health opportunities available on the market, and we link them together to provide the actual formulary to show all the digital health solutions available for the end user and the clinicians to use and also to recommend. Because the third point on here is actually going through and working with the clinicians and the clinical teams. If you have a library where, for example, any end user can search for the best applications, then the other thing we can go along and do is for those hospitals, for those GP practices, for those universities, for those county councils, enable end users, specific what we call pro account end users, to go through and recommend the best apps to their patients, to their students, to their parents, to their grandparents, and also to members of the community, all the citizens available. And what they actually have is they have their own portal with regards to, as you can see here, the ability of not only searching for the best apps, but knowing which the best apps are, linking to the LinkedIn digital health expert community to find out which are the best apps and where they are. Looking at, for example, your recommendations over time and seeing whether the people who are your recommendees are actually activating those apps and downloading them onto their phone so that they can either record the data alone at home, so there's no need to come and see the actual GP or the consultant or the nurse or whoever, or, for example, to record the data at home and then bring that information back to the consultant or the clinician to update them on exactly what's been discussed. In addition, we also have a Orca news community where we can share information, where we can discuss specific information about new solutions and applications available on the market and how they are being used by the general public. I can also see my favorites. Which are my favorite apps? Which apps do I like to recommend? Which apps do I believe is the best for the patients or the users that I am dealing with? And of course, we have also, for the end user, the ability of seeing all the webinars. So we can look at and update all the end users based on the requirements in today's digital health community. So once we have gone through and we have looked at the accreditation process to ensure only the best and safest apps are available to the end user, the ability to provide them with the actual library to view those applications. From there, we can go through and then enable clinical or specific pro account users to recommend the best apps to their end users. We then look at our fourth point, which is basically integrating the actual apps and the recommendation of those apps in the patient's care pathway. And we are working with clinicians currently to look at cancer care pathways, COPD, coronary care patient pathways, lung disease patient care pathways, to find out not only the best places, the best trigger points for that condition for the patient. So let's, for example, say a child with cancer, but also no one remembers the child's siblings, the child's parents, the child's grandparents. No one remembers that they're going through anxiety, stress, depression because of the child's cancer. And at that point in time, we can identify where and when the best trigger points are in that patient's care pathway to recommend the apps to all that particular cohort. And the final point, of course, is the ongoing economic sustainability. Eventually, we will ensure that everybody will receive an app, and that app will be recommended one way or the other by a clinician, by a GP, by a consultant, by alumni within the university, by a HR member of staff in an organization. At this moment in time, you can get your apps free, so entirely free, in-app purchase or paid for by that organization. So we have, as part of our libraries, a filterization to find all the best apps by condition, subcondition, function and feature, age range, because 3-year-olds can't use apps that the elderly will use, and the elderly can't use apps which teenagers will be able to use. So we can restrict the actual apps by age range. And in fact, we can also go ahead and say, why don't we see which apps are free, which apps are in-app purchase or paid for by the organization? And finally, whether it's iOS, Android, web page, or whatever the case may be. So the economic sustainability here is that eventually, and we're doing this right now, some organizations are paying for apps. And when they recommend the app to the end user, they are paid for, and the end user receives a code which enables them to download the app free of charge, because the organization recommending the app, whether it's a trust or a surgery or whatever else, has picked up that cost through ORCHA or through the London Procurement Partnership, which we're working with currently. If, for example, you're spending £1,600 a night on sleep deprivation assessment, and you, for example, believe that the Sleepio app, for example, can record that information by the end user assessing it, recording it, and presenting it back to the clinician, £300 a year for the use of the app, paid for by the organization, is a big saving on £1,600 a night for sleep deprivation assessment. So how does this matter? Basically, just to give you a final slide, with regards to what we do, we ensure that those apps which say, place your finger on the actual screen and we will tell you whether you have HIV. Place your finger on your portal on the back of your phone and we will tell you whether you have diabetes. And for example, those which will say, oh, the best place to kill yourself is here because the current's very good and it takes you out to sea. And it's supposed to, as I say, it's supposed to be a suicide prevention app. We ensure that only the best and safest accredited and approved apps are available to the end user for their use. And from simply looking at the COVID-related timescale that we've had since March, we have specifically seen in our organizations a 180% increase in session views And if, for example, you look at one of our organizations who went live with our site recently, in the first 3 days of going live, launching the site, they had 8,500 hits on that site searching for the best apps. We can also see a 66% increase in page views. So we can see that how that's absolutely rocketed. Recommendations has been unbelievable, because recommendations has increased by 6,500%. And it makes sense, because no one wants to go to hospital, no one wants to go to the GP, because their fear is there with regards to catching COVID. And as such, they phone, have a telephone consultation, and a recommendation is sent to their phone or to their email address. And from there, we've seen a massive 182.5% increase in downloads by those patients, by those end users, and even by the carers of those patients as well. So that gives you a quick run through of the ORCHA solution, who we are, what we do. We effectively ensure that every solution, whether it's VR, whether it's AI, whether it's an app, or whatever the case may be, can be assessed so that the end user knows that when they look at that solution, it is the best on the market, and it carries that weighting and that approval badge. I hope that's okay, David.
Yes, thank you very much for that, George. If you'd like to stop sharing your screen, so we can see you again. We'll see if we've got any questions. I haven't seen anything in the Q&A or the chat, but
yes, yep, of course. I'll just stop that now. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, George. Oh, well, I can see two of you now. I'm not quite sure how that's happened, but I can actually three of you. You're full screen, but you also got two versions of you at the top of the screen. So that's
very interesting.
A miracle of modern science. Georgie P, who asked about Ben Wilkins, is also asking for your contacts as well.
Of course.
Yeah. So when we look at preventative healthcare, obviously COVID-19 is a centre of attention. Are the track and trace apps part of the ORCHA system? Is that something that you deal with?
We review all the apps themselves, and they go through the ORCHA baseline review engine. So those apps which are, as I say, don't meet the actual standards and guidelines that they need to adhere to are quickly filtered out. So every app in itself goes through our particular engine in itself. All the specific scores, even for the NHS app library, we have reviewed apps on there on behalf of NHS Digital and NHS England as well. And obviously, we will continue to do so based on a requirements situation. So yes is the answer in a long-winded way. Okay.
Thank you very much for that, George. Well, just have a look, see if there's anything else in the chat. If you could use Q&A if you've got any questions. George has put his email address in the chat, so you'll be able to access it there. So if we don't have any more questions, you've finished absolutely virtually spot on time. So I'm now going to ask Chris Barker if he will activate his camera. There he is. And I'm now going to hand over to Chris and ask him to introduce himself and go on with his presentation. Thank you very much, George.
Thanks, David. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yeah, sure.
And can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
The technology is working wonderfully. So thanks, David. So I'm Chris Barker. I'm Chief Exec of the Spirit Health Group. To try and give a bit of a flavour for Spirit, we're a health-based organisation in the UK, so most of our experience comes from delivering health services. We deliver those across a medicines optimisation arena. We deliver them in primary care, where the largest provider of type 2 diabetes education to patients in the UK. We also have then a division that specialises in pathway redesign, and a key part of that is integrating, where appropriate, digital health into those pathways. We're rather rapidly growing, and that creates a number of opportunities. So the health challenges we see is that from a UK perspective, there are a significant number of stretches on the resources that are available to in the UK. We've got an aging population, there's increasing demand, people are living longer, and I don't think any of this is a huge surprise. There are more and more people living for longer with long-term conditions. That creates pressures. Combine that with COVID-19, and ultimately something has to change. What we've seen over the past few months, and from a Spirit perspective, we've been working on this for about 9 or 10 years, is the use of appropriate digitalization of pathways. So finding opportunities where we can increase scale, increase patient empowerment, increase video consultations and messaging through appropriate digital content. Our solution to this, which is now being used at scale across the UK and internationally, is CliniTouch V. What CliniTouch V does is it enables us to work with healthcare providers to digitize their pathways. So it's a digital health platform that connects people with clinicians through remote monitoring. It enables tracking of clinical signs, so using connected peripherals, but as importantly, it enables what we would call soft signs, so how someone's feeling, something that's a little bit more subjective. And it collects that information, it takes that information into a back-end database, and it creates a virtual ward that clinicians can then be reviewing and looking after their patients. So this is how CliniTouch works, and in a minute I'm going to talk through some examples of where this has been used in practice. So CliniTouch gives access to patients via a tablet, via the internet, via their smartphone, whatever means they want to. And if they can't access it in the UK, then we also provide that equipment to make sure that everyone who could benefit does so. Patients have either their own devices or we can provide them that can get inputs into the system from Bluetooth or by manual entry. It could be things like blood pressure. It could be things like someone's oxygen saturation levels, so the oxygen levels in their blood, which have been popular during COVID. And what we do is we take that information into CliniTouch. Within our database, there is then a risk management engine that creates an alert score for patients that gets fed through to clinicians, and it enables clinicians to prioritize the order in which they're dealing with patients based upon their need. This has been developed for numerous pathways, with the most common currently being respiratory and COVID-19, but we've got examples from spinal muscular atrophy through to Parkinson's disease, through to heart failure and COPD and assisted discharge. Essentially, any situation where we want to enable a patient to be self-monitoring, but also for a clinician to be checking on that and making sure that we keep people safe. So CliniTouch and the database is sat inside the Health and Social Care Network. It's a registered medical device, and it's been used at scale, as I said, across the NHS, and it's been increasingly tailored and developed based upon pathways locally. So next, I'm going to try and give an example of the types of use cases that we're seeing currently, just to try and give a realistic picture of what it looks like when it's used by clinical teams. So in Leicester Partnership Trust, it's been used by the long-term conditions teams. It's been used for monitoring of people with long-term conditions, including respiratory disease and heart failure. And it's about tracking deterioration of those patients. So it's about trying to keep them better for longer at home. And prior to COVID, when we're working with this team, we have published evidence of a 67% reduction, so a 2/3 reduction in hospitalization rates. That's come about because we've been able to monitor them, we've been able to video conference them when required, and we've been able to detect potential deteriorations sooner than we otherwise might have done. During COVID-19, when obviously people have been less keen to go to hospital, what we've been able to demonstrate is that we have reduced face-to-face visits by clinical teams. So we've had patients been better supported at home, and the feedback from patients has been that they feel that it's like having a clinician in their house whenever they want them, because when they complete their question sets and they complete that recording, they feel comfortable that someone's then reviewing that from a clinical perspective. I think importantly, this was deployed at scale in Leicester. So we went from having hundreds of patients to over 1,000 patients in less than 3 weeks. And it was about increasing capacity. It was about taking the existing patients, but also opening up many more spaces with the existing clinical resource. And essentially, we've taken the expertise of those nurses and those clinicians in those teams, and we've stretched that further, but without compromising patient care. The second example is in a very different setting. It's in a care home setting. So we've been working with both academic health science networks and the Patient Safety Collaborative to improve access for primary care services into care homes, and essentially make sure that care homes and their residents have the best access to primary care healthcare that they can, whilst minimising the risk from COVID-19 currently, but also whilst maximising the effectiveness and the time of those GP and primary care teams that are working ever so hard. So what Clinitouch has been able to do during COVID-19 and beyond is we've been monitoring people within care homes, largely for deterioration, but also checking for COVID-19. That's meant that we've got primary care GPs, so general practitioners, who are doing weekly ward rounds of people within care homes. They're checking on them based on the clinical dashboard. They're seeing deterioration. And I think really importantly in this setting, there's a carer dashboard that enables carers to be completing information on behalf of patients when consented. And if there's something that needs addressing more rapidly than a weekly ward round by a GP, then the system flags automatically using its risk management engine to the carer to take some action immediately. So what we've seen is a reduction in the amount of time required by primary care by about 40% to enable improved care of patients and more regular contact and more regular review of patients within a care home setting. So we've moved to weekly ward rounds in care homes whilst reducing the burden on GP practices, because they can review the information automatically and it's all there presented in a format for them. Something slightly different, but using the exact same technology, so it's a different care pathway, is how we have been able to use gamification to support cardiopulmonary rehabilitation within Leicestershire. So as part of our COPD project, our respiratory project in Leicestershire, we have digitised the pathway for pulmonary rehabilitation, working with the various health organisations in Leicestershire. What we've been able to demonstrate so far is that motivation's improved. We've been able to reduce the number of exacerbations, and we've been able to reduce the number of primary care appointments that are required for these patients as we're going through the pathway. We've incorporated levels of gamification into the system and are carrying on doing so to further that cause. So there's now levels and qualifications that people can achieve as they progress through that pathway. How the rehabilitation works is that there's an assessment to make sure it's safe. There is then both an online element and a virtual element with healthcare professionals in attendance. And we're able to track people as they go through the pulmonary rehabilitation 8-week course. And included within that is the ability for clinical teams to make sure that people are safe, as well as progressing through the course using the risk management engine within Clinitouch. So the clinical dashboard provides RAG rating. So someone who's not progressing through the platform will get raised at the RAG rating. If someone's got a reason why their, for example, heart rate is going too high, or someone's feeling ill whilst doing the education, that can be flagged as well. And where they're monitoring the outcomes post-assessment to look at how someone's progressed and what their outcomes are after the course. What we're hopeful of doing in time is being able to demonstrate that doing it this way with virtual and with digital, we can show it's as effective as face-to-face, but with greater flexibility and greater engagement from the patient cohort. So what I've tried to give you a really brief overview in the 5 or 10 minutes that I was given to present by David, is that we can provide a solution through Clinitouch that enables us to work within local pathways, work with local health services, to educate patients through an education platform, to monitor patients and review them when it comes to clinical safety and improving their level of care. We've got demonstrated outcomes to say that patients report better mental well-being and improved quality of life by using the platform, and that patients feel reassured and more comfortable. In addition, we've got published evidence of reducing the number of exacerbations, reducing the number of acute and emergency admissions, and reducing primary care appointments to go with it. So in summary, a really quick fly through. During COVID-19, the use of digital technology has exploded. How far we go with engaging digital may determine how long this continues. And the more we can incorporate this into care pathways and into local health services, the better. The more we can use virtual reality, gamification, and immersive technologies to make it engaging and interesting for individuals using this equipment is only likely to increase the engagement. Thank you. From my perspective, we're really keen to work with partners. We're really keen to engage with both health services and people who might want to use this technology in different ways. There are my contact details, and I'm happy to be contacted by anyone in relation to Clinitouch. David, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Chris, if you could stop sharing your screen now so that we can see you in your full glory. And we'll see if we have any questions. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? I can't see any in Q&A and in chat.
Either I did a brilliant job, David, or a terrible one. Time will tell.
Well, I think you, well, from my perspective, I'm quite happy with what you did, Chris, and I'm very grateful for you to giving your time this morning. Do you have any collaboration with Orca? I can see how a lot of the people involved in presenting this webinar have come together and are beginning to collaborate. Do you have any involvement with Orca? Would you use Orca to recommend solutions to your patients?
A pertinent question, David, I guess. So the answer is that, yeah, we have a relationship with Orca. We have lots of discussions. We don't currently have any formal collaboration. I guess we're a step back from the front line of people who are developing apps, in the sense that we've got a platform that people work with to develop pathways, which has been used in a number of different case studies currently. The door is very much open for us to collaborate with anyone, including Orca and other services as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Well, now we're going to move on to the next presentation. Are you going to be around for a little while if anybody has any questions?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks,
okay.
David.
I'm now going to just introduce Emma Lundberg. We have a recorded presentation from Emma because she's a little bit worried about the bandwidth situation. Before I load your presentation, Emma, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I think I'm doing that in the recorded version, which was recorded for the original meeting. You can go ahead and show it, and I hope that I'll be able to be online also after this event. We're having major Wi-Fi problems, but great to be here and meet all of you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see if we can load up your presentation. Just bear with me a second.
In Stockholm, Sweden. And through this work, I encountered the power of games and got really inspired. And that's the seed of Mindforce, and I will tell you more about that. So in this work, I'm one of the co-directors of a database called the Human Protein Atlas that basically maps all tissues, organs, and cells of the human body. And this information can later be used to develop better drugs, and it is being used by hundreds and thousands of people all over the world every month. And in this work, we've generated millions and millions of images, and we needed help to better analyze these images, and decided to do a citizen science project. And we were inspired by some other citizen science projects where they gamified the actual scientific task. But instead, we were thinking that it could be more efficient if we injected the scientific task into an existing computer game. So we teamed up with the producers of EVE Online, CCP Games, and MMOS, a small company specialized at this task. And together we produced a mini game called Project Discovery that is embedded into the virtual universe of the massively multiplayer online science fiction game, EVE Online. And this was an amazing experience. During 1 year, we got 300,000 gamers to help us analyze our images and decode the human body. If we look at the time the gamers spent on the minigame alone, they spent 70 working years helping our research, which is amazing. So this was a very fun project, and it led to a lot of great data being generated. We got a very nice scientific publication with an EVE Online spaceship on the cover of Nature Biotech. And well, it was just a great success in many ways. But what was mind-blowing to me was not the scientific achievement, but rather the fact that a lot of people gave us feedback saying that I learned something. You taught me something that I didn't even know. I didn't know. And all of a sudden, I'm motivated to pursue science, for example. So it made me see that computer games has this intrinsic ability to teach people things and create a belonging and well, motivate people. And I think that is something we can make use of also in health. And as you all know, medicine is changing. We see a development of wearables and new diagnostics and new drugs. But unfortunately, human behavior isn't really changing as rapidly. And a lot of these new treatment regimes still boils down to that we build new habits. For example, that we take medications or adapt our lifestyle somehow. And this is hard. And with this in mind, I founded Mindforcegamelab. And our mission is to create meaningful games that build healthy habits and act as a companion on the journey towards better health. And we figured that we were going to start with a very hard problem. And we went for what I would like to call a holy grail in medicine. And that is the problem of non-adherence. So only every other person takes their medication as prescribed. And this is something that is seen across many types of diseases. We see it for mental disorders, cancer, for cardiovascular disease, for metabolic disease, for asthma, for, well, almost all types of chronic or long-term diseases that require medication. And this might sound like a trivial problem, but it's really not. So drugs are developed so that you get the clinical effect if you take the drugs as they are prescribed. If you skip every other pill or don't take it for a week, your outcome will not be as good. And this problem is so big that the World Health Organization a couple of years back said that improving adherence would have a greater impact on health than any potential discovery in medicine. So we decided to develop a game to help improve the problems of non-adherence. And how do we then do this? There are, of course, many apps that provide reminders, but reminders often don't work because adherence is not only about forgetfulness. There's many other factors that impact why a person does not take their medication. For example, fear of side effects, misbeliefs of treatment, or lack of social support, for example. And we build long-term engagement by connecting rewards with inner motivation, such as goals, sense of belonging, or purpose, and fun. And this goes far beyond a simple reminder. So we build games that provide both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So our approach is fun, engaging, empathic, and rewarding. And are supposed to work as companions on the journey to better health. For us, it is also important to develop an empathic understanding of our target group. We call them our patients, and we use academic research, and we also invite patients and experts to co-create the patient journey. This allows us to identify the key experiences on the patient's disease trajectory so that we can address these real-world experiences with well-timed in-game experiences. And we've realized through iterative testing that the Tamagotchi effect is really important here. As you know, it's the effect where you can create emotional bonds to, for example, a digital product. And we've seen that for our patients, it can sometimes be easier to take care of someone else than to take care of themselves. So here we're connecting real life behavior with in-game behavior by connecting creating a habit loop both in-game and in real life. So our first product is called FIG, and it's built to address adherence for patients with bipolar disease or depression, because this is a disease area where only 25 to 30% of the patients takes their medication as prescribed. And to the right here, you can see some screenshots from the game. FIG is an alien that just crashed on this unknown planet. It is very hostile to start with. And FIG needs to take her medication, and so do our patients. So it's a perfect start for companionship. The patients can visualize their progress by building a magical home, and they can also experience and learn how routines such as sleeping, eating well, and exercising regularly, together with their medication, improve their overall well-being. So FIG is the first game for supporting medication adherence that is also CE marked and registered as a medical device. We've done a very small clinical evaluation initially that shows that all of our patients like the character FIG. In particular, they like that she mirrors the routines they have to do in their daily lives. And 74% says that the app helped them take their medication as prescribed. And if we look more into detail into some quotes about what they say, the app has helped me to take my medication at the right time every day, very important. It doesn't look like a medical app, but then it helps to build routines. And also FIG is like a blanket for my heart. There we have it, the empathic connection that we were aiming for. But yet we also have the reminders. The app is really simple to use, and the reminder system is worth its weight in gold. So altogether, I've been talking about this game here, but the game is just the wrapping of a sophisticated tech platform. Of course, it's compliant, it's intelligent, secure, scalable, connected. And we're also very excited about the connectedness here, that by connecting it to IoTs and wearables, we can personalize the game experience and nudge patients towards better health. And we believe that this will have a great impact overall of our patients' well-being. And with that, I would like to thank you for listening and reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss potential ideas or hear what you're working about. So,
well, thank you very much for that, Emma. I don't know whether you can switch your screen on so that we can see you. Thank you. Did that work okay for you? Could you see your video okay?
Yes, it worked better than it would have me giving it live now. So thank you.
Well, I think it was an excellent and very articulate presentation of what you're able to offer. I'm just having a look in chat to see if there's any questions in here. Okay. Helen Routledge says, love this, Emma, and I loved it as well.
Thanks,
I'm fascinated by the Tamagotchi analogy, because I think this is absolutely right. One of the previous experiences that I've come across is with elderly people, particularly people living on their own, not a digital Tamagotchi, but something like a robotic pet dog. Which gives them an animal which, in inverted commas, they can care for. So I guess this is at the heart of it. It's easier for us to care for something else than take care of ourselves.
Yeah, and we've tried a lot we've iterated during the game development, of course. And initially was much more focused on AR scanning, interaction with the medicine, and that unlocking fun game elements. But it never showed that strong kind of drive of adherence as the Tamagotchi effect did. So we were also a bit surprised by the power of it, but it's really, really amazing.
Yes, and again, a lot of people may not be familiar with EVE Online, but you know, this is quite an introduction into it, and it's amazing how many people you got engaged in this project.
Yeah, that was great fun as a scientist, getting to work on a project where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of gamers. That was just remarkable. It was remarkably fun, and they provided amazing data, and we got a high impact paper out of it. So it was just overall impressive. So I really hope we get to see more citizen science as well.
So what do you see as being your plans to roll it out to a wider audience? This is from Chris Barker.
Yes, we will roll it out to a wider audience. We will do it probably both direct to consumer. We're still discussing that, and also through partnerships. So it's still being mapped out, but it will be rolled out to the wider public during 2021. And we will also develop products for other disease areas in the near future.
And did you mention CE marks for any of your solutions? Obviously I missed that.
Yes, it's CE marked, yes.
So are you finding now that the authorities like the FDA in the USA and those responsible for CE mark, they're more receptive to VR and immersive technology solutions now?
Yes, but I would also want to point out that we have registered it as a medical device. We're not giving recommendations about dosage changes or anything like that. For that very reason, we do want to stay out of the kind of therapeutic registrations, because we think that is still very hard. So we've made it easy for ourselves. And for medical devices, it's more about safety and security, and that's not too hard to prove. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Emma. Oh, just so we did have one more question. Is FIG specific to symptoms of these conditions?
Yes and no. That's a very good question. So what we do when we develop these games is that we first map out the disease trajectory. And then we know, for example, after 2 weeks, people usually get side effects. After 4 weeks, they feel like it doesn't work. I might as well quit, for example. And we base that on science. And then the general game is kind of can be applied to anything, but we want to adjust the timings with the different aspects that happens in game with the specific disease trajectory. So there is a redevelopment that we're doing, and also maybe changing the tone and the feel of it to address the target audience. In this case, we developed it for people between 18 and 35, because that's usually the age of onset. So there's some changes, but not that much. So pretty general.
Well, thank you very much for that, Emma. I'm now going to ask Helen Routledge to show us her video, and I can give her the floor. So Helen, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Would you like to introduce yourself and share your presentation with us?
Love to. Thank you, David. Let me just share my screen. On. Fab. Can everyone see that and hear me okay?
Yeah, fine. You're perfect.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Helen Routledge. I'm CEO of Totem Learning. We're a digital learning agency based in Coventry, and we specialise in serious games, virtual reality, augmented reality, and essentially anything that's going to bring learning to life. That's really our mission, is to bring experiences to life, create places where people can play and experiment, and hopefully make learning stick and lead to that ultimate behaviour change that we're all looking for. So today I'm going to talk about a game we're currently working on at the moment with the working title of Don't Walk Past. And it's all around the subject of confidence around mental health and the confidence around having conversations. The game is being developed in partnership with Kent, Surrey and Sussex Academic Health Science Network. And something that we love to do at Totem is work in partnerships with specialists, because while we might be specialists in game design and psychology and learning, we're not necessarily specialists in the end topic. So we find that that collaboration is absolutely essential to creating good solutions. So really early on in the project, we got as many people as we could together in a room and started to talk about mental health, talk about people's experiences with mental health, and talk both personally, but also as a professional. And the solution that we were talking about is for everyone within the NHS. So this solution is for clinical and non-clinical staff. So everyone from the porters all the way up to the consultants, we want everyone to be involved, because mental health is everyone's concern. We should all be able to talk about it confidently and openly, because mental health carries an economic cost of £105 billion each year for the NHS. So there's a strategy at the moment all around the parity of esteem. And this is about making sure we are as good as fixing our mental health, or good as talking about and thinking about our mental health, as we are about our physical health, and having them on an equal playing field. And why do we need to start talking about this? Well, the problem is, I suppose, we don't like talking about it. So we have to start gradually helping people understand that it's okay. And that, you know, nothing bad is going to happen from having these kind of conversations, because it's really difficult to talk about our mental health. There's a huge amount of stigma associated to it, but we know that being able to talk openly can really, really help. So that's what we've been focused on, is to helping people talk about their mental health. And why? Well, you know, it's embarrassing. People feel like they should be able to cope, or they don't feel like they've got anyone to talk to. And on the other side, people might not know what to say. If someone comes up to you and they're distraught, or they believe they've got something wrong, people often shy away from that conversation, because there's a huge concern around litigation. And, you know, if I say something wrong, something might happen, and then that's my fault. So we try to step away from it. And again, just going back to the previous slide, if we can just have these conversations, then it often will make a real difference to everyone's lives, just to be open and to know what to say. So we're currently working on Don't Walk Past, and like I say, it's going to be rolled out to, or available to everyone, everyone who wants to play it. And because we've had to be very aware of how people might actually play it, we know that people are under pressure currently in the NHS. Mental health is especially important at the moment, but we're looking at very, very small micro interactions. So someone might have 2 to 5 minutes just to have a break, have a think about this. We talk to many, many nurses, and we know that they don't take lunch breaks, they don't go to the toilet, they don't take a drink, because they're so focused on helping their patients. So what we had to really hone in on is how we can get information across and a really valuable experience in a really kind of short time frame. And so we've got this structure of this almost like episodic game, where there are patients in the hospital. They have presented most likely for a physical condition, so a broken leg or a scan or an X-ray. The whole idea is, you know, if you see someone, don't walk past, let's engage with them. So the core loop behind the game is around conversation, clearly. So that's, you know, what characters can say, what you can say back to the character, but also observation. So body language it speaks so much to us. So kind of being able to read what that body language is saying. And then the investigation part. So someone, you know, this is a character on the screen at the moment, Jane, she might say something that you think you might want to dig a little deeper into. And then it's how do you go about doing that in a sensitive, empathic way to try and help and understand. And it's about reflective practice as well. So the great thing about having a place where we can practice safe conversations is that then we can kind of understand how our choices and responses could impact Jane. We have a concept of an empathy bar. So you start to build empathy and you start to build a connection to the player, to the character. And as you build that, then more options open up to you. And you can, once you finish that micro conversation, you can go back through, explore different paths and maybe try again and see the different outcomes. And this is absolutely not about diagnosis. This product is all about reducing nervousness around these conversations. And like I say, we're not going to diagnose anyone through this or make anyone a specialist, but our aim is to increase people's confidence around those conversations. Because it's a busy environment, we've built in interruptions. And we've tried to mirror real life as much as possible, because we all know that there's the ideal. I'm sure a lot of us have been on training courses where they say, you know, sit down, have a really long, gentle conversation. But in real life, that often isn't the case. So we've tried to mirror the real world environment as much as possible within that core loop of the gameplay. Now, the conversations are built around a system called Sage in Time. So this is currently used again within the client audience, and you know, so we followed this structure, but accidentally, I suppose, a lot of training, a lot of e-learning in the traditional sense can feel quite patronizing. So we tried to keep it as real as possible. So alongside the Sage in Time method, we've hired a professional scriptwriter from the world of kind of movies and games, and he's published author, and also has a lot of personal experience in the field of mental health as well. And so we are taking that interaction really seriously, because the games industry has been or has a reputation for not really considering dialogue that important. But when we're looking at a character-based game, the dialogue, as well as the character visuals, are one of the key components of that interaction. So for us, that authenticity of that interaction was really, really important. Even to the point of when we started talking about the script writer said, can the characters swear? What swear words can I put into the script? Because if you're thinking about someone who has a high level of anxiety, someone who is really, really suffering, they're not going to use perfect Queen's English all of the time. You know, emotions run high, and we need to be able to make it feel really authentic and engage people. Because if it feels bland and patronizing, people aren't going to engage, and then we're not going to get the outcome that we're looking for. Another key aspect of the solution is that you can learn about how to have conversations, and you can kind of learn to spot signs, but then so what do I do next? And there's a lot of information out there as to what you can do, but that information is quite hard to find. So we've tried to bring it all together. And at the end of once you've been through some of the conversations, there is a localized and personalized help system. So you'll have your local support groups come up into the app itself that you can then reach out to and follow up. So we call that the kind of exit through the gift shop mechanic, and trying to bring it all together. So the game in itself has an awful lot of features and benefits, as games do. Games are really engaging, as Emma touched on as well, and they do connect you on that emotional level. They ping your curiosity, so you want to keep talking to the characters. And I suppose the few things I'll pull out here is that the development of Don't Walk Past has been user-centric from the start. So that's so important for us to create something that people will actually be able to use in the environment but gain value from. the authenticity of the design was absolutely key. And of course, the engagement, because we all know something new and shiny comes out, we'll have a play with it, but then life will get in the way. And that's why that episodic kind of gentle release of content is really interesting. And so, yeah, again, you know, we want to get people talking about it, making it feel real and relevant. And so the outcomes we're looking for are that increased confidence, having more conversations, and people are understanding that mental health is everyone's responsibility. We're still in the development stage, so we've done soft pilots, and we will be further piloting throughout 2021 and going for a full rollout. But the key, we're going to be looking at key data from the Quality Care Commission, to look at how patients feel like they were actually treated, and then look at the confidence levels among the staff that we're working with at the moment. So thank you very much, and thank you to David for inviting us to talk about Don't Walk Past. We're really excited about the work we're doing in this space. Like I say, we want to make mental health everyone's agenda, and my contact details are there, so I'd welcome conversation with anyone about the work that we're doing. And like I say, partnerships are really important to us. So thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Helen. If you stop sharing your screen,
yeah.
So that we can see you. Yeah, thank you very much, Helen. I enjoyed your presentation. I always enjoy listening to you share some of your experience. We go back a long way when it comes to serious games. I just have one question to ask you. You saw and you heard Emma Lundberg's presentation when she was talking about the Tamagotchi. I'm just interested in this. The differences between something like the Tamagotchi and the fantasy world environment that the Tamagotchi lives in, and your own environments where you're basically not necessarily photorealistic, but real representations of people. How do you see those differences playing out in the way you develop these things?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you can, you know, I think both approaches are completely valid, but we've got different audiences, I think. I think Emma's had to jump off, but Emma's looking at the patient side and we're looking at the kind of the staff side. And from the workshops we did early on, it came to us that people needed to be able to get into the game really, really quickly and understand what was going on really quickly. So we didn't have the time and luxury to build up a world and get people to understand that world. Whereas I think if you're looking at adherence to medication, then you want to make people fall in love with that world and that character as well, which you can clearly see that people did with Fig. It was just phenomenal. And so I think that different design approach is impacted based on audience and also, you know, environmental aspects, such as time and kind of need to get in and learn.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. I don't think we have any more questions, but I know we have a chat message asking for your contact details. So I think people are going to connect with you with LinkedIn. So thank you once again for giving some time this morning to join us. So now I'm going to ask Gareth Frith if he will switch his screen on, and I can make him full screen. Gareth, if you're there, if you can switch
yes.
on. Okay, you switch your screen on then, please. Yeah, there you are, Gareth. Okay, so the floor is yours, Gareth. You could tell us a little bit about yourself and share your presentation.
Fine. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me here, David. I suspect I'm slightly different from some of the other presenters, as I'm not here to present an actual solution for the end user healthcare here, but I'm here to tell you a bit more about what we're actually doing in terms of the education of the future medical and healthcare workforce, because obviously they they're really important in terms of understanding a lot of the new technologies and how to teach with it and how to work with patients and things like this. So some of the, I come from the Leeds Institute of Medical Education in the medical school at Leeds, and I work a lot with Health Education England as well in terms of the way they use training both at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. We're focusing a lot on immersive technology like augmented mixed virtual reality, and these are some of the questions that I ask myself, and also people ask me, what is immersive technology? Why should we use it for the healthcare education and training? Is it worth the effort? Is it, we're just chasing some shiny new equipment? And what style of immersive technology should we start to be using for this education process? And a lot of this came out of a review which was done for the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. It was actually commissioned by the previous incumbent of that post, Jeremy Hunt, that delivered in early last year. And it focuses on the issues of, well, in over the next 10 years, the kind of technologies that we're going to be using to deliver healthcare include things like genomics, digital medicine, of which we've talked quite a lot about today, artificial intelligence, and in the surgery area, robotics. And of course, that raises a very important question, is that how do you then train all the 1.4 million people who work for the NHS in some of these new technologies over the next 10 years? That report was delivered to HEE beginning of last year. My boss, Trudy Roberts, was on the executive committee for that. And that's the sort of document that Health Education in England are working on. So if we go back to sort of some of the styles of immersive technology and think about, augmented reality, to start with, this is a really interesting example. It's about engaging people in anatomy, thinking about their bodies, thinking about what's inside them. This is actually my 7-year-old grandson who's actually wearing the T-shirt, and it triggers things on the smartphone that they can go into and play around with. So it goes down really well, and it gets a lot of students, and especially school students and later year students at school, really interested in the kind of things that we're doing around medical education.
Gareth, can I just interrupt you? I gather from what you're saying that you're supposed to be sharing your screen. We can only see you. You're not sharing your screen, so you will need to share your screen if you want us to see your slides. So.
Okay. How do I?
Just click on share screen and then select the PowerPoint presentation.
Get back to the right page, don't I? Don't know why that didn't work, but
if you move your cursor, if you select share screen, and then select the PowerPoint presentation that you're talking about.
Go back to that.
Okay, now we can see. Now we can see.
Sorry about that. I don't know what we've got there, but let's perhaps step back slightly on that one. So just to do a slight recap, this was the Topol review. This was the image that I was talking about, augmented reality. and being able to use things like smartphones for education and engagement with schools and so on. It's a great tool for children's education. Some of the other work we do is around orientation. We have around 1,400 medical students who spend a lot of their life in NHS practices and undertaking clinical practice. So, you know, being able to engage with them from an orientation point of view is really important. This is a orientation of a clinical skills lab, and you can see a little camera there. And if I click on that, it'll run a video of what's going on in that particular lab and so on. Similarly, this is a resource that we built for the students around a crash trolley, because believe it or not, if I go to Bradford Hospital, the crash trolley is laid out in one way. If I go to a Leeds hospital, the crash trolley is laid out in a different way, and it gives you, you know, the ability to look at the inside of that crash trolley, see how it's laid out, see the work that's being done there. You know, if we move on, then we've done quite a lot of work around mixed reality in terms of teaching things like anatomy. It's really great for small group teaching. It really involves the students in experiential learning, so they can actually see, for example, a hologram of a patient. They can work with it, and they can walk around with it, and they can you know, they can work in a small group with a teacher as well, with other students, and ask each other questions while seeing a particular patient case in mixed reality in the room. You know, some examples of that case, Western University in the States have used it across all their undergraduate anatomy teaching and so on. What we're also working on is things like virtual ward rounds, you know, how to take the student around a ward, interact with the patient, but also in virtual reality. So it gives them that experiential learning that they might not get, especially in a COVID situation at the moment, where, you know, we might have difficulty getting our students into real live wards and those kind of situations. You know, and that's an example of using it for anatomy teaching. You can strip down from the body right down to the skeleton and so on. So these are the kind of things that we're now working with our students, and they're seeing the kind of digital tools and mixed reality tools that you can work with. This is an example of an acutely ill patient in mixed reality. You can walk around him, you can interact with him, you can hear, you can speed it up and see the various stages of, it's actually an example of anaphylaxia as they're happening, you know, and it puts pressure on the student to do something like diagnosis, you know, intervention and so on this. We're working with the University of Thessaloniki, and they also are quite expert in that area. They have a living lab environment, which is something I was just thinking about with some of the previous speakers talking about, you know, that sort of initiative of working with patients in that live situation. You know, really clever stuff you can do, like you can take a patient's MRI scan or a CT scan and now overlay that through a virtual reality headset. And this allows the surgeon to start to plan, say, an operation, because you've now got the MRI scan actually overlaid on the actual patient and things like that. So this is something that our students are actually starting to work with and look at the benefits of and so on. The other sort of simulations you can do for an emergency ward, you can simulate those, and these are obviously could be done in CGI, they could be done in video, but you can think of it now low cost entry with these kind of things. You know, the student's mobile phone a small cardboard VR headset, and you can actually introduce this as a personal learning approach to the students. So again, it's this on-demand type learning that you can now do with medicine. The other things we've started to look at is looking at tours of various places. We've just done a tour of in virtual reality of one of the histopathology labs in the hospital in Leeds, just to give the student that experience of it. It's not something we can take 250 medical schools students through at a given time, but it is something they can follow through and work through in their own time. And this is a virtual tour around a cardiac operating theatre in another of the hospitals in Leeds, where they can actually see who the staff are. They can talk to the staff. There's no actual patient in there, but they can actually understand what actually happens, what the roles of people are in there. And it's really good in getting them prepared in their education, so that they don't just know facts about medicine, but they actually are experiencing this, so they can start to use this in the future in their in their clinical practice. I mean, other things, virtual reality is more complicated devices with hand controllers, so you can train surgeons and things like this. But I think the important thing is really looking at, how the more immediate learning can happen with the students using these technologies. So, for example, does immersive technology improve learning? And that's a big question. How do we measure that? How do we do that? How do we do it as a personal learning or as group teaching? And what size do we deliver teaching to? And is it worth all the effort that we go through? And I think it's really interesting that now we've been doing this, teaching of students and medical students and healthcare students this way. Here in Leeds, they have just formed their Immersive Technology Society, and they are looking at some of the how do they develop some of the solutions that we've probably heard some of the speakers around earlier this morning, in terms of, can they be involved in that kind of development? Can they take those skills and help to improve the health of the community in developing some of these applications? So it's changing their view, and they're a really interesting group, and they're doing it worldwide across the industries, including healthcare and medicine, and that's really interesting. And I was just considering one or two of the earlier talks and thinking those students will be really interested to hear some of this. So, a lot of what we find also is that things we develop for students can also be very useful in patient education, giving the patient a tour of the MRI scanner before they go for a scan, showing them how to get to the radiology department, how to get to, the kind of things that might happen in their treatment and so on. So this is becoming really, really important. So this is just a quick go through of the kind of educational processes that we're going through to really help and help deliver that services in the future. So that's me. That's my contact details. Happy to answer any questions on or off the air. So I'll stop sharing now and come back to David. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Gareth. Sorry about the mix-up. I should have asked you to share your screen from the beginning, but I think yeah, you did show quite a lot of good examples of the kind of work that you're doing, and I think it's very important to make the point that is coming across increasingly is that this is a very multidisciplinary activity. We've been used to having different professions in silos in the past. So when you go to med school, certainly it was true in my day at Birmingham University, they were really a very tight knit cloistered group, and they didn't really get experience of what we were doing in electrical engineering or other departments. But it's obvious from what's happening at Leeds is that the technologies like virtual reality and immersive experiences and games are being embraced by the students. They are welcoming ideas and expertise, and we're seeing how a lot of the medical applications now are being developed by people who don't necessarily have a medical background, but they're able to collaborate with the medical profession.
Yeah, I think there's a danger at the moment that we get a bit heavy on the surgery side, but you know, I think with the new generation of students coming through, that they are really thinking about the whole team of healthcare professionals that are needed to work with a patient, and I think that's really good.
Yeah, and I think preventative healthcare is especially important in that context.
Absolutely, David. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning, Gareth. I'm just looking now to see. I'm going to ask Kim Vergottini is our next scheduled speaker. So Kim, could you switch your camera on, and I will put the spotlight on you and ask you to share as your expertise and your presentation.
Hi, glad to join this. Yeah, so let me just turn my screen sharing on. I do have a little presentation for you. So my talk is going to be focused on technology in the future of nursing. So, you know, a lot of what I do here is conversations about how we're going to use VR and AR for medical professionals, for physicians. And, you know, I kind of feel that the industry is a little bit missing the boat on including nurses. The first demonstration that I saw of the HoloLens, which Gareth, you know, thinking of your presentation, I got an experience a few years ago, I think it was 2017, to experience that Microsoft HoloLens demonstration that you showed there. That they also use at Case Western Reserve University. So I, in my career, worked at Cleveland Clinic. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a nurse of 22 years of experience, and I worked for Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. Currently, I'm living in the United Arab Emirates because we built a hospital out here, and I came to open that facility about 5, almost 6 years ago now. But prior to that, being in Ohio, I was close to Case Western Reserve University. So I've seen some of that technology implemented, and it sat with me that the industries were really developing for surgical purposes and for medical training, but the bulk of the healthcare industry are nurses. So I began the course of training myself to become a Unity certified developer with a particular interest in creating digital human characters and animations that replicate more realistic sort of interactions. And now I have left the Cleveland Clinic to develop my own company, which is called Smartly. Which stands for Simulated Medical / Nursing, because, you know, we're all in this together, augmented reality technologies and learning environments. But when I say augmented, I also include virtual reality and artificial intelligence as well. You're welcome, by the way, to anyone who's listening to send an invite to me on LinkedIn. I have the fortune of having probably the only version of my name. No one else is going to show up when you type that in, Kim Vergottini. So, you know, what's interesting is that I had my idea and I started working on my company before COVID. But COVID is an example of why the time is now for this type of technology to really come into its own and to come to fruition. Recent times that have showed us that if we are not ready, that you know, it's not just a nurse that will not do well on the floor, but it's an entire hospital system, or maybe even a community, or in the case of COVID, that the world that will be affected by nurses that are not, where we can't continue to keep their training up to sufficiently manage crises that happen in the world. Very recently this year, the World Health Organization back in April issued a remarkable report called The State of the World's Nursing 2020. This is a 144-page document that you can find on their website, and it is eye-opening. It is the most extensive report ever done on the situation of nursing in the world. Now, nursing as a profession has always had shortages. We're quite used to that. But what this report demonstrated or pointed out is that we are going to have a massive deficit in the healthcare industry for nurses and for healthcare workers. So a projected shortage of 5.7 million nurses and 18 million healthcare workers will occur by the year 2030. And this report being in April, you have to remember that that's at the beginning of the pandemic. I wonder if they repeated this report now, if those numbers might increase or change. So the report gives a massive push to governments to invest in acceleration programs for nursing education and to build the infrastructure that is needed to really address global needs. Even in the US, the job market report there shows that there's a far better than average, a much higher than average growth for registered nurses at a rate of 15% per year from the year 2020 to 2030. And that is triple the average for all other professions. So the average growth is only just 5% for most professions. How, you know, these, by the way, were pre-COVID predictions. So again, I would wonder how these numbers would change when they issue new reports, maybe in 2021 or 2022. So we are definitely seeing lots of evidence that there's going to be a massive shortage of nurses and healthcare professionals to come. We used to manage healthcare at home. This is, you know, back in the 1940s, 1950s, or earlier than that. There weren't huge hospitals that were built, and it was much more common for doctors to make home visits. What's interesting is that, you know, what goes around comes around. What's old again will be new again. And we will see things like the Microsoft HoloLens being used for home visits. And that's one way to address some of the shortages of that hospitals will have, is we need to stop building large hospitals and focus really on preventative care and ways to keep people cared for more properly in their home. This technology provides a new way of doing that that simply wasn't there before. If anyone is a Star Trek fan, you will recognize this doctor who's actually a holographic doctor. Star Trek is always so far ahead of itself. And this technology is actually here today. I mean, we can do that. We can use the HoloLens to project a doctor right into the living room of a patient so that they can actually get their home visit, for true virtual home visit there, rather than having to go into the hospital facility. We need to think about how we train our nurses, how we train our staff, also as more of a high reliability, high risk industry, the way that other industries have been doing it. So other industries are way ahead of us on the curve with this. Aviation leading the charge, right? So aviation has been using some version of virtual reality, whether it be on a headset or using simulators. They've been doing that for decades. And now the healthcare industry is just now starting to catch on. The military also, they are one of the earliest, the biggest adopters of this technology. This slide is a demonstration of how most hospitals, if they are lucky enough to have the simulation center, can conduct simulations and training today using high fidelity mannequins that may cost, the mannequins themselves can range from anywhere from $70,000 to $150,000, $200,000. And if you think about what else is needed to build a room like this, to build a simulation room, the beds are not cheap. Those are like the price of a small sports car. It would cost you anywhere from $500,000 for a very inexpensive, very simple simulation center to $2 to $3, even $4 or $5 million to really do a simulation center upright. And so you'll find that unless you are the Cleveland Clinic or some facility that is really has the money to spend on that, most places can't. There are some good examples of what's being adapted online to, so for example, the American Heart Association is using computer-based training to prepare people before they come into the simulation environment. So once they run through some, they can run through some algorithms online. It helps prepare them. So when they do come into the simulation center, they can just do a test out rather than having to go through all of the course in person. And so that saves a cost of running a mannequin simulation. But again, it's not as real as doing the real thing. So, here, for example, at Smartly are some examples of real life patient, or not real life, but like simulation patients that are made to look like real life patients, and how realistic that we can actually make the virtual environments. And we can do this at like a 30th of the cost of what a healthcare simulation center would cost. I'll just give you a little bit of a demo of a product that's in development right now. This is through a VR headset. So you can see that it's a pretty realistic one. It feels a little bit flat when you're looking at it on a computer screen, but when you're in the immersive environment, how real it feels. And we tried to build in the functionality of even things such as the bed, so that objects are interactable. And this really helps promote spatial learning and experiential learning. So it's not just about raw knowledge that and multiple choice question types of tests where you have a 25% of getting the answer right if there are 4 choices. You have to think of what you're going to do to interact with this patient. This patient can talk to you, you can ask questions, you can assess things, you can listen to lung sounds and heart sounds, you can check pulses, you can check pupillary response. This is all done in such a much more realistic and natural way to learn that now there are states that are looking to replace their clinical placements with some amount of virtual reality hours instead of clinical placement hours, because we simply don't have the room in all of the hospitals to put through the number of nurses that we will need to train for this future, right? For this deficit. We have about 1,000 in the United States, I'm speaking because I'm living in the Middle East right now, but in the United States, there are about 1,000 nursing schools. And in order to meet that deficit of 5.6 million nurses and 18 million healthcare professional shortage by the year 2030, there is just no way that 1,000 nursing schools will be able to meet that need. So virtual reality is now being looked at as a lot of state boards of nursing are taking into consideration whether or not they could use virtual reality as a means of substituting out some of those clinical hours. So we're working on making this much more realistic so that you can actually do things in a much more natural way. The nurse has to actually think of what to do next rather than looking at a multiple choice question where there's a 1 in 4 chance that, they pick the right answer just because they're given to them. Let me just move off of this particular. So you can see that, definitely I think that if you read something, you'll remember a certain amount of the knowledge. If you hear something, you're in a lecture, you're gonna maybe hear, the retention is like maybe 20% of what you hear, you remember long term. But what you do and what you physically are able to experience and understand on a visceral level leads to long-term knowledge retention. So this is the future of where nursing is going. And I think that big companies are making a mistake by ignoring this market a little bit. And hopefully we will learn to capitalize on that. But, I'm a nurse, so that's why I have developed this mostly for nurse training. But we will also embrace medical students and the medical profession because, of course, everything that we do today is multidisciplinary teaching. And so there are lots of overlaps there. And let me just stop the sharing there. So
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Kim. I'd like to just compliment you on what you've achieved. I think I'm more familiar with people who've made the kind of transition from the world of technology into the world of medicine to develop applications. You've come from the other direction. You've seen the potential of the technology and trained yourself to be a Unity developer. So congratulations for that. Gareth, I know from the work that Gareth has done that he uses a lot of consumer technologies like 360-degree cameras for images and videos to give people the experience of being within a hospital facility. Whereas you've developed these environments using computer graphics, basically. Do you see a convergence between these technologies where in time you will be able to use these consumer 360-degree cameras and be able to create a really high fidelity, realistic environment?
Sure. Well, 360 video that includes human beings would be a little bit complicated because you have to get, if you have an image of a human being, you need permission for them to be in it. And you obviously can't have real patients, for example. But photogrammetry, I think I'm saying it right. I don't think
photogrammetry, yeah.
Photogrammetry. I mean, this is becoming much more commonplace, right? So it's possible that in the future that you might actually be able to have someone come in and make a replication of your room. I mean, that's not that hard to do that, actually. So you could make, I could do many things on the hospital, like the room that you saw in that video, for example. I can swap out a lot of the textures and make it much more look like whatever hospital that you are in, so that the environment, replicates that for the nurse. So they feel like they're in their own hospital environment. So, this technology is advancing so fast. I have just seen even in this last year, how quickly it's evolving, that I think by, the year 2025, for example, only 4 years away, really, the graphics are going to be astounding. And I think, yes, you can have a blend of those two things. I like for me, I like the virtual more than the augmented. I see a role for augmented reality as well. But the benefits, I think that they'll serve different purposes. I think that you could use augmented reality to train people on real equipment, for example, because they could have the real equipment in front of them, and the augmented reality can be guiding them through the user interface or, the instructions on how to use it. So you can use it in a training way that way. But the benefit of virtual reality is that you can make anything. You can, recreate an entire operating room if you want. You can also make things happen in that environment that it might actually be a more beneficial experience than the clinical setting would have provided. So I think back to when I was in nursing school, I went through my OB/GYN rotation and I never got to see a birth. I stayed beyond my clinical shift. I, went in extra times, and every time I was assigned to a female who was supposed to give birth, and they just didn't do it in that period of time that I needed them to. And I remember there was one woman, she already had 4 kids, and she said, stick around, I'm going to have this baby for you. And I stayed 2 hours extra, still didn't happen. So, and even in orientations, when we used to orient nurses to the PACU at the Cleveland Clinic, for example, where I worked, we did a lot of different types of surgeries. So to try to get in one of every type of case in that nurse's orientation period is difficult, right? So you might not have like a kidney transplants, which we would do. You might have 2 or 3 in a week, and then you may have several weeks that you don't have any at all. And so a nurse might go through their entire orientation and never have that until they're actually out and on their own. And now they're taking care of a post-kidney transplant for the first time. And they're already out of orientation. So hopefully they have good pod mates who want to help them out and recognize that they haven't had this type of case before. But at least with virtual reality, you can give them that experience, and maybe you could use it to supplement what they are missing in their orientation. So this is just going to open huge doors. I think also, like right in the middle of COVID here, unfortunately, I was still in development at the beginning of COVID, but imagine if you could have just sent the nurses home with the nursing students home with headsets so that they could continue their clinical learning, because nurses right now who are in their junior and senior years of nursing school are struggling. They cannot get the clinical experience that they need, and their programs are required to have a certain amount of clinical hours in order to be accredited and to sit for the NCLEX exam. And they can't get those hours right now because of the restrictions from COVID. So it's a real situation that we're in, and we can't afford to be in that situation given that we have such a shortage progressing over the next 10 years. We have to have a solution. That was a very long answer. Sorry.
Well, no, I don't apologize for a long answer. I think a very comprehensive answer. Not for
thank
you.
A
long, very comprehensive answer. But I'm very glad that you are using your experience in the profession to deliver content and solutions that are based on your real life experience. And I think it's very important, as you say, to give people an opportunity to experience situations and scenarios that may be very unusual, very rare. But at least once those are available, then when a situation arises, it's even possible to have some very quick training to give people some orientation on what to do. But
exactly.
Thank you very much for joining us, Kim. I'm now going to hand over to our next presenter, and I think it'll be the last presenter.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Kim. This is Shakila Kulasekaran. I don't know whether I pronounced your name correctly, Shakila. Your audio is a little bit quiet at the moment.
Right now, am I audible?
It's not, still a little bit faint.
I think it should be better now.
I can hear you. I can hear you. So if there's any chance of improving, or bring the microphone closer.
Just give me 2 seconds.
Shakila has joined us from India. She heard about these sessions and these presentations and asked if she could do a presentation on her expertise. So I'm just giving you a bit of background, if you can.
Yeah, how is it better now?
Well, we can hear you okay, so I suggest you carry on with your presentation, Shakila.
Yeah, I'll just start my presentation. Actually, like the cyclonic storm, because of that, like there is no power supply. I have to come out to the cyber cave to present this. I'll just start sharing my screen. I'm really sorry about it. It's all a loss.
That's okay. That's okay. I understand, and I'm grateful for you being able to join us. from all the way from India. Which part of India are you in? Remind me.
No, I think I should be able to present from my end.
Okay, we can see your screen.
Yeah.
We're just waiting for the first slide to come up.
So I'll just start with a small intro about myself. I'm basically a pediatric intensivist and a neonatologist, and started into simulation training because I felt like whenever we manage critical care patients, most of my residents and all that, taking a critical decision making, they really lag behind. And we usually sum up at the end of the problem arises, and then we thought like we should have our own simulation courses. So designed courses for simulation modules for PICU, pediatric intensive care, and neonatal intensive care. And when I was doing the simulation courses all over Pan India, with like I'm one of the national faculty in the Simulation Academy, and I felt like we don't have enough simulators. So that's the reason I ventured into making our own simulators, which can really meet the requirement presently in India, like where the cost of the simulator is one thing. A developing country like India, we won't be able to get into getting simulators which are imported, which are very costly. And sometimes I feel like most of the, like I will not say most, some of the simulators, they don't serve the purpose of teaching. They just lie down as one real dummies, and then we have to import so many things into it. So we wanted to bring out some functionality in our simulators, and that is through bringing out the AR, VR, and digital technologies. So that our focus will be on improving the patient experience. Like we wanted to apply AR, VR, and digital technologies in improving the patient experience and improving the patient experience. We are right now in the process of using humanoid robots, which can help in remote healthcare. And then for psychological treatment, we are coming out with the application of AR in educating the children with autistic spectrum disorder. And body mapping is one thing which I always used to get amazed at, which we are just trying to work up in a very infantile stage right now. So I don't want to speak much about it. And advanced diagnostics, just the milliliter of or microliter of blood sample, we wanted to improve. This is also a link to digital technologies, because most of the time, like I being a neonatologist, whenever the newborn is being pricked many times, sometimes we end up giving a blood transfusion because we have sampled the newborn to an extent that it might require replacement. So we wanted to go in for mostly in advanced diagnostics. We wanted to go in for micro-technical diagnostics, where with a microliter of blood, all other possible investigations are being done. And these are all in the infantry stage. In surgery run-throughs, again, we have started it. And emergency navigation is one thing which I would like to emphasize on. We are just coming out with a small ATM machine that sized instrument, which can help in emergency navigation. Like for an example, there is an accident which has happened. This emergency navigation tool can assess with the fingerprint of the individual about his identities, and then it will give up about the nearest emergency facility available for shifting. These three things are in development: the emergency navigation, patient experience, and psychological treatment. And we hope like one day we will be able to achieve all these goals. And our vision, I'm just coming to the vision at the end, because we wanted to utilize all these technologies. One is to improve the healthcare education, so that like all these my residents come up like armament saying that yes, I can do it, I'll be able to do it, I'm confident, I'm competent. That is one thing which I want to bring in my residents. The next thing is improving the healthcare assistance, that the healthcare delivery can be improved to a very greater extent by using digital technologies. And India is slowly growing. It's in the primitive stage, but we are trying to use it to the fullest maximum. So like today I'm here to present on our fully developed VR simulator. I've been just able to see around 3 or 4 presentations because of the poor net connectivity. Like all the presentations were very amazing, and then like hope I'm able to bring out some interest in new people. So like this is this is an acute pediatric peritoneal dialysis simulator. Like why you have come out with this is like most of the time, whenever there is a peritoneal dialysis has to be done in an NICU or a PICU, the residents will be asking the nephrologist help, or if there is a need for doing it in a primary health center or a rural remote health center, most of the time they will be expecting the nephrologist to come, or they shift the babies. Healthcare system in India is totally different and not that fully organized. So by the time of shifting itself, the child gets into a very bad acute kidney injury where it sometimes becomes an irreversible kidney injury. So I want things to happen at the site of problem, so that I want to train these people, with the people who are in the remote health centers, with our pediatric peritoneal dialysis simulator, so that they will be able to confidently do the procedure, and then ultimately it is saving more people lives, which is my dream always. So like that is the reason we have come out with this. When you look at the statistics, the incidence of APA is, this is an international statistics, not pan-India. It's a pan-global statistics. It says like acute kidney injuries for around 5 to 10% of the non-critically ill, and 15 to 36% of the critically ill babies. Whereas when you come to the newborn picture, in NICU, it is around 60-24%. What usually happens in NICU is that most of these pediatricians or even neonatologists, they really get jittery when they see a tiny newborn with a 1 kg weight, 1 kg birth weight, going in for a renal acute kidney injury, not poison urine. They become totally jittery. They just try to get help from nephrology unit and all that. But if they are trained, then they will be able to manage any tiniest baby with our, which is an acute procedure, which is being globally practiced as an acute modality of treatment in AKI. So like the present problem with why we should come out with a new simulator when we already have some simulators. We have an adult like whatever present in the global as all over the globe is, we have an adult torso which is made to sit in vertical alignment, and like mostly we see the patient in a supine in a lying posture. This learning totally gets disturbed. Like if I'm an intern or a trainee, if I'm getting trained with adult torso, I will always ask my patient to sit up or stand up and trying to do a peritoneal dialysis. That is how I feel the learning process totally gets affected with the present simulators. The cost of the simulator is also very high, and the incidence of APA is increasing, but it has lack of trained clinicians in performing the peritoneal dialysis. And they don't teach the key elements, like just doing the procedure alone is not going to find a solution to the problem. What we want to bring out the change in the learning process is the person who is able to the person who is able to do the procedure should be able to identify any problems coming out of the procedure, should be able to plan the PD order, like how much of fluid I should let in, how much of time I should keep dwelling, and how much I have to drain out, and if the draining is not coming, if the negative balance is so much, what procedures I should, what rectifications I should do. So all these things the learner will learn through when they learn through this VR platform. So we have come out with an innovative novel PD simulator, PD Arna. PD Arna is a symbolic name for anything which is a flowing river. So this is something like the lessons goes like a flowing river. At the end of the education, the learner will be completely confident and competent enough to carry on with the peritoneal dialysis. So our PD Arna is cost effective. It's a made in India product, and the performance of the learner inside the virtual field is calibrated and provide objective performance assessments, so that like if anyone is not able to have a proper assessment, they can keep on redoing it, replay the procedures, and unless and until they attain their perfection in their procedure. And the learners, it's a very good learner's companion, as learner can learn in their own space. In India, the situation is totally different. The interns and residents who are in emergency workup, they'll be busy doing the work. And am I there? Am I audible to people? Hello? Am I audible to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I thought like I'm gone somewhere. Okay. So like it's cost effective maybe in India, and most of the time the learner will be busy with the work schedule, which will be a hectic schedule. So whenever they are free, they can take the VR headset and then they can learn on their own. And the other further features of it, like it's a VR headset with the controllers, the learner plays inside. I think all people who are in the forum right now must be aware of what exactly VR platform or the training schedule will be. So I just would not like to go further in this slide. So we have kept 12 sets of scenarios in it. The 12 sets of scenarios inside the VR platform will teach the learner to attain these following learning objectives. At the end of this learning process, the learner will be able to describe the indications and contraindications of a peritoneal dialysis. He'll be able to perform the procedure in proper, and he'll be able to plan the PD order. So this is most important. Like instead of calling the nephrologist, calling the critical care physician about like how much to be done, what dialysis fluid to be used, he will have an idea of like what dialysis variables he has to make for a particular clinical situation. Like there is a hyperkalemia child, so he will decide about, okay, let me go with a potassium-free dialysate. And if it is a child who needs more of edema, which has more of edema, more fluid to be removed, so then he will decide about a dialysate of a hypertonic dextrose solution. So all these things are built up inside the VR. It's not the procedure alone. Procedure per se they learn. They have a comprehensive education of the overall peritoneal dialysis. And whenever there is a complication arising out of the procedure, like there is no drainage or there is no fluid flowing in, then he will be able to assess what exactly the problem is. He will be able to combat the problem. Sometimes it will be a very simple problem like the bag, drainage bag is not at a gravity level, it is just in a higher position, or it will be just the valves, three-way valves which are not being opened. So we have kept 4 set of scenarios in each of these 3 learning objectives, and through that the learning happens. And coming to the this is a small sorry, it's getting loaded, I think. Yeah, let me just go to the last slide and then let me. I'm really sorry for this. I have to make final arrangements to present this.
Yeah. Sorry you're having problems, Shakila. We'll wait for your last slide.
No, not that. I feel like I just made it within a very short span of time. Make everything ready. Then at the meantime, like my mobile, my net connection at home totally got crashed. And I have to drive my vehicle, no parking area. I've kept my vehicle somewhere far away and then have to walk down to this place. But anyway, for simulation, I can do any number of, to take simulation forward. This is one example. I can take any amount of stress and all. It's just done. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, thank you. If you want to stop sharing your screen,
I'm
Shakila.
Just showing the video. I'm just showing the video now.
The video is not playing.
It's now playing? Good.
No, it's not. It's not playing.
It's not playing.
I think it will be very difficult to play a video with your connection.
That actually is a good thing which I wanted to show. Just give me 2 seconds.
The video is not playing, Shakila. Maybe if you could go to your last slide. It's not working, Shakila.
It's okay. It's not working. It's okay. So I just will go to the last slide, and yeah, like this.
Yes, we can see the last slide now.
Yeah, I'm just showing my last slide. Like the products which are under development with the VR Echo simulator. It's again a hybrid simulator where we have a physical simulator for the cannulation, and which will get integrated with the VR field for with the 27 set of scenarios to improve the learning skills of the learner. And the next one, which is really very close to my heart, is pediatric shock simulator. This is something like this simulator will be able to show a prolonged capillary refill, and at the end of a treatment, it will show the titration endpoints also. It is something like the simulator speaks with you, gets corrected on the moment you're giving the proper fluid therapy. And it comes with the thermal scan images, which are integrated through AI, where you'll be able to predict shock with the simulator itself 9 hours prior to the hypovolemic or any type of shock. So this is also coming up with that. The third one is a VR-based games, which we are coming for pediatric trauma and pediatric emergency. They are both web-based and they are video-based, like VR-based also. And the last one, as I discussed earlier, are the humanoid robots, which will help in delivering healthcare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Shakila. If you could stop sharing your screen now so that we can see you. Yeah, thank you, Shakila. Thank you for joining us today. I realise it's a very difficult situation for you there with the audio quality and the connection, but you know, I think it's very encouraging that you are developing these solutions within India. Because we tend to be very US and European centric when we're looking at these solutions, but we have to realize that there are huge centers of population in places like India and China and different parts of the world. And it's been my experience that when it comes to technology, India in particular has shown a lot of enterprise and innovation in their uses of technology, and they've been able to achieve things because they've been able to see uses of technology that very often that we miss within Europe and the USA. So I'm just going to invite, and I'm going to go into gallery view so that we can see that we are with Gareth, still with Gareth. The other presenters that we had today all have prior arrangements, so they've had to leave the session. Gareth, I didn't know whether you wanted to ask Shakila anything or make any observations about her presentation.
Well, thanks very much, Shakila, and I think I managed to catch most of the presentation. It's really interesting because I work at the medical school with a number of pediatric specialists, but also with an adult acute kidney injury specialist. So I'm just thinking here whether we can actually bring some of these people together within the education side of Leeds Medical School. So thank you for triggering some of those thoughts for me. And thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question to ask you, Shakila, based on the statistics that you showed of the incidence of acute kidney injury for newborn babies and for young children. Are these percentages of the total population who, it seems like a very high percentage of acute kidney injury? the figures that you showed, which were over 10%, and is that of every baby that is born, that there's 10% of babies have acute kidney injury?
Yeah, like it is according to the AWARE study. This is one of the group which analyzes the acute kidney injury. They only coined the word also as AKI. Before we used to call it as renal failure. Now it's called as AKI. So this AWARE group, that AWARE et al., they had made it as the statistics is as per their studies, the AWARE study, and this is something like even I was totally stunned when I saw the statistics of the prevalence of the AKI in children, especially in critical care units, and as well as in NICU. Like as far as the neonatal ICU, because like I work as a consultant in neonatal unit, it's quite possible that in India it is more than 24% also. I can say even up to 30 to 34% of these newborns in the critical care unit, especially in the level 3 care, they are prone to go in for acute kidney injury. This is as far as the AWARE study.
Well, I congratulate you on what you've achieved, and thank you very much for sharing your contact details with you. The webinar is being streamed into YouTube and also recorded. So we hope to make those recordings available widely so that other people will be able to get in touch with you and share their expertise with you and also learn from you. So thank you once again for joining us this morning. I'm going to conclude now, and I know we only have a relatively small number of people left with us, but I just want to share some of my own personal experiences of the use of gamification for preventative healthcare, and then I'll bring the session to a close with just inviting if there are any final questions. So I'm going to take the spotlight again, and I'm now going to share my screen and go through a few slides based on my own experience of preventative healthcare using gamification. Well, this was the slide that I left in my introduction, and I've been talking about the consequences of lifestyle-related conditions like obesity, cardiovascular problems, etc., due to the lifestyles. And lifestyle conditions are the biggest cause of mortality. So how do we address these kind of challenges? And I've identified 3 different types of approaches that we might use. We could develop clinical solutions that prevent or manage these conditions. And obviously, in the case of coronavirus, if you look at that as an analogy, we're developing vaccines. And for other conditions like cardiovascular conditions, we have drugs like statins that help to manage these conditions. So we can look at a pharmaceutical solution. We could also, with lifestyle-related conditions, try to influence the food industry and citizens through public policy intervention. So if we make it unaffordable to take food that is bad for us or unaffordable for people to smoke, then this is one way of perhaps presenting some lifestyle-related conditions. Or we could develop better personal health management solutions and practices, which is what we've been talking about during the webinar presentation today. So these are some examples of clinical solutions, and diabetes is one of the biggest cliffs that we are all heading towards as a result of our lifestyle condition, particularly lack of exercise, sedentary lifestyles, and poor diet choices. We could have injections which can help to cure or mitigate diabetes. And we could engage in surgical procedures like this gastric band procedure. Public policy interventions through taxes and legislation. We've already seen the way in which coronavirus is being tackled with lockdowns and social distancing. And these are examples of public policy interventions which are designed to influence human behavior. Here's some more examples of public policy interventions through awareness and education, having some terrible pictures on the back of cigarette packets to try and dissuade people, and educating people by making it mandatory that you should include nutrition facts on all of the foods. Or the third solution, again, which is what we've been talking about today, is look at how we can provide tools for better personal health management. And this is where we came in with the first presentation, really, from Ben Wilkins, because he was talking about a whole range of applications that are now available to help us manage our own health better. So who's going to provide these solutions? Will it be medical professionals? Will it be politicians? Or will it be citizens? I just want to talk about the role of serious games, which include immersive experiences and virtual reality, and the way in which these technologies can make a transition from looking at cures for things to looking at preventative healthcare. And so I'm not sure where this quote came from, possibly from Sir Simon Stevens, the head of the NHS in the UK. And it stated that it's quite clear that the best chance we have for increasing our lifespans and overall improving our health is to adjust our personal behaviours, and to do so at an early age. How can we do this? Well, my approach was to look at the way in which I could use gamification and wearable technologies to influence my behaviors. And the good news is that a lot of the devices that we can wear today are consumer devices, and increasingly are becoming or blending into medical grade continuous monitoring devices like the Oxytone device that you see on the right there. I started back in 2013, and I started using wearable technologies then, and I began with the Jawbone Up bracelet, a Jawbone Up 3, and since then I've worn a variety of different consumer devices. I'm now using a Fitbit Versa 3 device, and this is a kind of information that I use to influence my own behavior, looking at my sleep quality, looking at my physical activity, the number of steps that I do every day, and looking at my nutrition and the food that I've been eating. And in my case, if you look at how I was 15 years ago on the left-hand side, some 10 years ago in the middle, and in May of 2013, this is a picture of me on stage in a play. And within a few months, I was able to make substantial improvements in the physical and also, surprisingly, my mental health. Again, these are a couple of before and after pictures taken in Thailand beside the same person in 2013, and again in 2015. That's the same person stood beside me, but I do look a little bit different. So how do we do this? Well, I want to use an analogy and to ask you to think about your body not being a temple, but your body as being analogous to a car. And your body is actually the car or the vehicle that helps you to navigate life's journey. And if we look at our journey through life from the cradle to the grave, we know pretty much the starting point, or certainly the starting point and the final destination. And we're aware of some of the places that we will visit en route, like having a family, becoming ill, and then eventually getting old. But we have no idea when we set out on this life's journey of how long this journey is going to last and whether the route will be easy or difficult. So if it's our body that's going to be used to take us on this journey through life, it's important that we look after our body, because it's the condition of our body that will determine the nature of the journey and how long it will last. but we don't do enough, as Ben indicated, to monitor our body's condition and properly maintain it. And if you look at the way the technology has evolved within cars from the time around when I was a young boy, and our family used to travel in my uncle's car, which is a Humber Snipe, like the one you see on the left. And this car was maintained not just by my uncle, but it was maintained by what you could describe as knowledge professionals, the garage mechanics. But in my early life, I became accustomed to breakdowns and the need for the car to be serviced and repaired quite regularly. And a lot of it was to do to the fact that there's not only inferior manufacturing techniques, but the lack of technology in the older cars made us more reliable on these experts in the garages to diagnose problems, maintain the cars and repair them. But today we have no end of different data measurement tools within cars to measure and visualize the status of the car, and also where we are and how to get to our destination. So if we look at lifestyle technologies in the same way as we look at the technologies that we are seeing in cars, these wearable and embedded technologies can change the dynamics of management, like they change the dynamics of car health management. So if we look at ourselves and we look at where we are and where we want to go, this is where I was in May 2013, and I really wanted not to body beautiful, but certainly to be a lot healthier and at less risk of diabetes. This was the destination that I wanted, and I used wearable technologies and the applications that went with them to help me navigate that journey. So the challenges when we are looking at this as a solution, Ben articulated them very well in his first presentation. So if you missed that, I certainly recommend you look at the recording, because he spoke very eloquently about the real life challenges of maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And it's a fact that individual life circumstances are different, and each individual has different circumstances which affect their ability to comply with a healthy lifestyle. There's also a time lag between cause and effect. So we can overeat for a while, and it will take quite a while for it to have an effect on our weight. And similarly, we can get very impatient when we try to go on a diet or do more exercise, because there's a time lag between when we're doing something and the effect of that. And it's also a very personal and sensitive subject. So we may not be always very open to sharing information about our health. And of course, we all like things that are not necessarily good for us, myself included. But looking at this at a global level, I think employers have a big opportunity here, because involving or using gamification within a corporate environment to provide incentives to encourage employees to adopt a healthy lifestyle is really good business, because poor health represents a cost of profitability. And gamification and the kind of tools that we've seen provided today, particularly for things like VR and immersive technologies for stress management, they can provide a real, genuine staff benefit. Ben Wilkins talked about the group psychology and the fact that people were not looking at it as a health intervention, but something to look forward to as a social event, which they look forward to every year. And it was shared with a number of other people. So from a corporate point of view, I think it's incumbent to embed good health practices into a corporate strategy. And if you are an employer, if you are providing better health services to your employees and you resulted in a better and healthier workforce, this gives you a competitive advantage. So the takeaways from gamification and the immersive technologies is to look at it from the perspective of gamification and life as being like a journey. And you need to make the destination as attractive and accessible, as affordable as possible. So a good, healthy situation, good healthy body and mind should be as attractive and as accessible and affordable as possible. And how you get there, as Ben showed in his presentation, we need to make these journeys, whatever technology we use, to be as enjoyable and rewarding as possible. And we can help facilitate that journey by creating or using milestones to celebrate and mark incremental achievement. And we must also, as well, accept the fact that these things are not perfect. Human beings are not perfect. We all have lapses in our good behavior. So we need to prepare to accept these and prepare for what you might call diversions and breakdowns, and make the whole of life journey a learning experience. So I just want to stop sharing now and conclude by thanking all of our presenters for joining us today. I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience of listening to some really fascinating presentations. I'm just going to have a final look at Q&A to see if there are any new questions or any chat issues that I had to address. Okay, no, just a few congratulations. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. I'm now going to bring this presentation or this webinar to a close, and thank you all. It has been streamed live on YouTube, and I've managed to record the bulk of the webinar within Zoom. So one way or another, the individual presentations will be made available, and they will be promoted to my network and through my social media channels. And I encourage you and I invite all of my speakers and also my participants and audience today to help share that knowledge by liking and sharing whatever social media I publish. So thank you once again. I'm now going to stop recording the presentation and stop the live stream and just say thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.